Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1113 of the War News Stream. And today we have very big news that Russia is set to reject the Ukraine ceasefire deal, and a big shocking move, of course. Ukraine also launches major frontline offensives across the entire front line, and also Putin visits Kursk and comes out the bunker to go and see what's going on, to his dismay. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we are here to cover the past 24 hours of the news from around the world, as a matter of fact, not just from Ukraine, although there's significant news coming out on that, but from around the entirety of the world, as we have had major developments happening in quite literally every single corner of the globe again today. And moving on into our major piece of news, first off, or at least give you all a purview and a summary of all of the news that we have to cover tonight, here are our top stories. Number one, we were able to hear that the Russians appear to be prepped and ready to reject the ceasefire arrangement that the United States and Ukraine have agreed to present the Russian Federation with, as inner sources from the Kremlin are all saying that it appears that Putin is poised and ready to shoot down the ceasefire deal. And not only that, the European Union and combined intelligence of multiple countries that have been members of the European Union have come together today to present what appears to be some form of a document that the Russians had already prepared on February 28th to present immediately once they were approached with the proposition of a ceasefire, once again appearing to show that the Russian Federation is attempting to exert unconditional surrender on the Ukrainians as a prerequisite to an agreement on a ceasefire arrangement. Meanwhile, the United States of America has openly threatened the Russian Federation today over the supposed idea of them rejecting the ceasefire, as it has been made very clear by the office of the President of the United States that if the Russians do not reject the ceasefire, if the Russians do reject the ceasefire, the United States of America will be providing all military support possible to the Ukrainians to make the Russians a red smear on the map. We have also been able to hear some additional news as well, that it appears that the Syrian civil war is now in full swing once again. Not really that big of a shocker. It has been going on for several days, but we have been able to see that Syria has pretty much fractured in the identical way that it did under the Syrian civil war when all of the coalition, well, not really coalition forces, but all of the different factions were fighting against Bashar al-Assad, and it appears that the civil war that has now happened for the second time will be having no end in sight whatsoever. Meanwhile, the Iranians have been approached by the United States to once again denuclearize. The Iranians have refused, and the United States is now beginning to ramp up significant sanctions against the Islamic Republic of Iran as a consequence to their poor decision-making and actions. We've also been able to hear that inside of Taiwan, they are conducting their first immediate response drills in the history of the Republic of China's army on the island of Taiwan, and we've also been able to hear that a small Chinese flotilla of 3 warships has circled around the entirety of Australia's exclusive economic zone and appears to be attempting to menace the Australians at this moment. We have been able to also hear significant news from the front lines in Ukraine, as we've been able to hear reports of Ukrainian drones striking the cities of Voronezh and Krasnodar, and we've also been able to hear that the Ukrainian armed forces have begun limited offensives in practically every single direction on the front, including the directions of Kupyansk, Siversk, Bakhmut, or more so Chasiv Yar at this point, Torertsk, Pokrovsk, and even down into the direction of Velika Novosilka, with almost all frontline areas reporting significant progress, or at least a decent amount of details about how they are pushing the Russians back. However, the news is not all great in every direction, as we have been able to hear that Ukrainian armed forces have been pushed back inside the Kursk Oblast, and it does appear that the Russian Federation has been able to achieve the upper hand. While some people have been blaming the United States and their lack of military support for several days, and also intelligence sharing for the collapse of the front lines in this area, it appears the Ukrainians have actually had a different assessment of the situation and have actually insisted that it was a failure of the logistical structure of the Ukrainian armed forces in the area that is leading to them now being pushed back into the city of Sudzha itself. Meanwhile, Putin has also arrived at the military headquarters set up by the Kursk Oblast government and has publicly stated that they will now be treating the Ukrainian armed forces within the Kursk Oblast as a terrorist force, meaning that they will not be provided any quarter if they surrender and will most likely be summarily executed on site, as they are now being officially recognized by the Russian Federation on a presidential level as an ununiformed armed insurgent force instead of an actual armed force. And we've also been able to see that in those statements today, it appears that Putin is already signaling and keying the idea that they will not be accepting any kind of a ceasefire proposition that has been presented by the United States and Ukraine collectively to the Russian Federation. There is still a massive amount of news even beyond that. These are really just the biggest topics of the day, but I'm sure that many of y'all are really getting the gist here that this was not a slow day. It was not a slow day at all. This is probably one of the largest news days that we have seen once again, and we say that almost every day, but the craziest thing is that the news is getting wilder and wilder and larger in every single aspect, every single passing day. But moving on into our major news of the night, we have been able to hear from quite literally everywhere that the Russian Federation has a very high chance at this point. We are now assuming it's most likely a 65 to 70% chance of shooting down the ceasefire proposition that Ukraine and the United States have agreed to approach the Russians with, and it seems that internal Kremlin sources are saying that the Russians will most likely not accept the ceasefire, as we have been able to hear that Putin is unlikely to agree to a U.S. proposed 30-day ceasefire in Ukraine, a senior Russian official told Reuters. According to that senior Russian official, he stated that Putin has a strong position because Russia is advancing. And that advance is only in the Kursk Oblast. The Russians are losing ground in every single front line but Kursk, and for that reason, Putin is once again most likely going to make absolutely absurd claims to the United States of America and Ukraine for them to ever get into a actual peace negotiation or an effective ceasefire. We have also been able to hear that the European Union has uncovered something that might be a very important document. Once again, it might be, because it looks like it may be an alleged source at the moment, but according to information that we have been able to find, it appears that some form of European intelligence has received a document with Russian proposals for possible peace talks, according to the Washington Post, as my voice cracked right there, greater than the Russian army cracked at Pokrovsk. But beyond that, the document was read a week before the U.S.-Russia meeting on February of 18th, and it appears that this document has been lying in wait for a pretty long time. time. February 18th was about an entire month ago, and it looks as though the Russian Federation was already getting prepared to put forward their unconditional terms to even get into a ceasefire. So let's get into each specific term that the Russians are supposedly already looking for, and we're going to compare this to the terms that they've laid out over 3 entire years of war every single time anyone has approached the Russians for a ceasefire or a possible negotiation to the end of the conflict. The statement that the Russian Federation made in this document is that the President of the United States' plan to achieve peace in 100 days is unrealistic, which I think is a fairly decent statement to make, to be entirely honest with you all, because it looks like the Russians are not willing to budge at all. They also stated that there can be no peace in Ukraine until 2026, because of course the Russians love peace, but not right now because they need a rain check on it. So come back in a year and maybe they'll want peace then. If the West
That's
does...
like, what's the point of waiting until 2026? What's the logic behind that part of the plan?
I honestly can't even tell you. Like, to be entirely honest with you, I really don't even know. I think it's the fact that the Russians believe that they might be able to get some significant leverage by 2026 on the battlefield, maybe even trying to rough up the Ukrainians enough that they'll be able to start pushing them back. And then by that point, they would pretty much say by 2026 that they're not even going to get into negotiations because they're winning so well. So I don't really know what the point is of that, to be entirely sure. But still, that was
It's basically, it's to me, it seems like it's basically saying we need to wait until 2026 until our complete Russian economy collapses, and then there can be peace. It's like, well, I mean, I guess that is true to an extent, because once the Russian economy collapses, there will be peace in Ukraine. So I guess that's a true statement.
Man, and also, here's another one. If the West does not recognize the territory seized by Russia, the war may start again. Pretty much saying, if you don't give us exactly what we want and exactly the ground that we hold right now, no stipulations, we will start the war pretty much immediately again to continue to take more ground. Meaning that they are not looking, once again, according to this document that the Europeans were able to get, and was once again corroborated by the Washington Post, it appears that they are making it very clear that they're not looking to just freeze the front line and hold the land that they have right now. Based off of this statement right here, this is a minimum prerequisite to making any kind of a peace agreement, which means that the Russians would still be insisting on having the entirety of the Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson oblasts ceded to them in a peace arrangement. Once again, that's going to be entirely unacceptable, because even the United States, in its most lax understanding of the negotiations right now, are saying that in the worst case scenario, the front line freezes where it is right now. In the best case scenario, they're actually still expecting that Ukraine will be able to get back some of these lands, maybe possibly the Zaporizhia Oblast or Kherson, or some other parts of some oblast elsewhere, meaning that this is going to be a no deal for the United States and Ukraine, because this is starting to continue to insist that the Ukrainians must give up more than they've actually ever lost in terms of ground. Also, the Russians have stated that Ukraine must abandon NATO, or the proposition of ever joining it. And that is something that it appears that the United States is on board with the concept of. But once again, we covered this last night. The Russians, this is more so give a mouse a cookie and you'll ask for some milk kind of a thing with this, because the Russians mean when Ukraine must abandon NATO that they cannot be Western aligned at all. So if the United States comes in and says that's fine, they won't be in NATO, but we are going to give them U.S. security assurances ratified by treaty, which are binding security assurances, this means in effect that Ukraine practically did join NATO without joining NATO. And to explain the understanding behind that, NATO is not an offensive alliance. NATO is entirely a defensive alliance. That's what exactly the NATO charter says. You really cannot use NATO in an offensive means whatsoever. This means that NATO provides a net protection to all of the countries that are inside of it. Everyone will team together to defend each other and protect everyone as a whole. And that means that if Ukraine gets security guarantees with just the United States alone, which wouldn't be the case, because we already know that the Polish, the French, and the British are more than 100% on board with also providing security assurances for Ukraine, that means that every major military power in NATO has provided security assurances, or pretty much a defensive alliance, to Ukraine, which means in effect they join NATO at that point without technically being in NATO. Because if Russia attacked them again, they're going to get almost the exact same response if Ukraine was in NATO. Let's think that out. If Ukraine is in NATO and they get attacked, Everyone comes, the Polish, the French, the British, and the United States, and all of the dozen other countries in NATO, they come to the defense of Ukraine, and they fight the war on their side. If just the major countries alone have defensive pacts with Ukraine, like Poland, France, Britain, and the United States, if Russia attacks Ukraine, all of the major military partners of NATO come into the common defense of Ukraine and fight the war on their side. So for the Russians, this may as well be viewed as the very same thing, because what the Russians are really looking for in this peace arrangement, if there even is one that they're willing to accept, is that Ukraine is entirely on its own and will be weak and vulnerable to another Russian invasion in the future again, where they can hopefully take more ground or take out the Ukrainians once and for all and either turn them into a Russian puppet or absorb most of the territory in Ukraine back into the Russian Federation. We've also been able to see that they stated it is necessary to completely change the government in Kyiv because it is impossible to change it from within. Meaning that the Russians are insisting, according to this document that was given by European intelligence to the Washington Post, that the entire Ukrainian government has to be replaced. That means the entirety of the Rada, that means the office of the president, that means the Ministry of Defense, that means every single major governmental institution largely has to be completely replaced on Russia's whim, which is something that the United States has even made clear at this point they are not going to be looking for. There has been no talks in between the United States and Ukraine in the Saudi Arabia conference the other day about having any kind of elections in Ukraine anytime soon, as it is largely being understood, and it is the case, that Ukraine cannot hold any elections in wartime. Ukraine simply does not have a constitution that allows that. There is a specific constitutional provision inside of Ukraine that states that elections cannot be held during a time of war, and elections can only be held in peacetime. This means that there is no way to replace the Ukrainian government without conducting an unconstitutional act according to the Ukrainian constitution, which means that this term is completely impossible to do without pretty much forcing the Ukrainians to have some form of a governmental coup, which of course would lean into Russia's favor, because the only kind of coup that there would be an anti-Western, anti-US coup, overthrowing the current government that Zelenskyy is in charge of and bringing in one that's pretty much pro-Russian, much like there's always been a pro-Russian government in charge of Ukraine in the past up until about 2014. Russia also wants to create a buffer zone on the border with the Bryansk and Belgorod regions, which is also a pretty wild kind of a claim, because that means they're going to be trying to create some sort of a larger demilitarized zone around Bryansk and Belgorod, which are in these areas, and we also believe that that will include Kursk as well, effectively meaning that the Ukrainians will be neutered in this idea that the Russians have before they even get into a ceasefire. And I want to make this clear for everyone again. This is the groundwork for Russia to get to peace talks. This isn't what they're looking for in the peace talks. This is what Ukraine and the United States would have to accept to even get to peace talks in the first place. Pretty much, this is, in short, before we even get to the final points, this is ensuring that the Russians get almost everything that they want outside of the peace talks before they even get to them, which is absolutely absurd. They're going about this ass backwards with deliberate reason. It is also proposed to make the south of Ukraine, including Odessa, a demilitarized zone, meaning that pretty much everywhere where the Russian Federation's borders would touch Ukraine, the Ukrainian army can't be anywhere near it. So that means that the Ukrainian army would pretty much be in the heart of Ukraine, near to areas like Uman, Bilazervka, Kyiv, and Lviv. So really nowhere where they could actually respond rapidly to another Russian invasion. All of those areas would have to be completely void of Ukrainian troops, but the Russians could build up soldiers along those borders whenever they wanted to in the future. And finally, peacekeepers, even from outside of Europe, are not needed, and they will be under the influence of the West. So pretty much saying
no joke. That's the whole point. That's the whole point, by the way. It's like if we send in peacekeepers, they'll either have the NATO umbrella or they won't. But nonetheless, at the end of the day, they're still European forces. So if they're attacked, it would be a question of whether or not that country is going to respond to Russia's attack if their forces are hit in some sort of attack on those forces. So, and like, obviously, they're under the influence of the West. And also, this entire list right here is basically a way for Russia to basically allow themselves to come back in and invade once again. That's all this big laundry list is right here, is setting up the stage for a future invasion at some later date.
It is an absolutely crazy kind of list of things that we're getting at this point, that it appears that the Russians are going to be looking for. And once again, to lay this out there, this is pretty much exactly the same things that they were saying if this is the case under the prior president's administration, which pretty much forced the war in Ukraine to just keep on going until the Russians eventually get beat down enough to see eye to eye to even make it to a negotiating table. So this is going to be something, once again, that is going to be a deal breaker for the West and the Russian Federation. We're going to see that the war keeps on going for some time. Not only that, but we've largely been seeing signals as well from the U.S. government that it appears that the Russian Federation isn't actually as apt as it's been made out to be to actually achieve peace. Now, one thing that I do want to point out, just to make sure that we clear up the air for as many people as we can, the President of the United States has stated that he has talked to Putin multiple times at this point, since he has now taken the office of the president into his charge, and Putin has made it incredibly clear that he wants peace. In fact, Putin's pets are only white doves with olive branches. He's just all about peace, and he never will want to harm a fly. And as a matter of fact, the Russians are willing to get to peace talks right now. And so, once again, remember that. That's what we've been hearing so far. And now the office of the President of the United States today, with once again making that very clear, that's what the President's been saying, that the Russian Federation has been claiming they're about, is now threatening the Russian Federation today, which is starting to show us that they're having a lack of faith right now in what actually could be done to largely see that a ceasefire is put into effect. The President of the United States threatened to devastate the Russian economy if Putin refuses the ceasefire plan, which means that this idea that the Russians are 100% behind peace and want to stop the war and stop the killing right now isn't as surefire as a lot of people are making it out to be. It appears that the United States of America actually has some decent beliefs that the Russians may refuse this ceasefire agreement, or may have, once again, some sort of unconditional surrender clause put in for them to even try and put a ceasefire into effect. We'll probably see, to be entirely honest with y'all, knowing how this has gone so far, that the Russian Federation will say that they love peace and they really do want a ceasefire. But to get to a ceasefire, the Ukrainians have to completely demilitarize. Zelenskyy has to step out of power. A new government has to be brought in from the ground up, much like the terms that we've been seeing already that were presented by European intelligence to the Washington Post. It's going to be absolutely unconditional terms of surrender, and that's going to be something that the Ukrainians nor the United States are willing to accept, because that is showing that the Russians are going into these peace negotiations on bad faith, and they're not willing to actually go in and listen out any kind of actual ideas or even topics where both sides are equally displeased. The Russians are only looking to take advantage of the situation and attempt to gain as much as they can for themselves out of the entire ordeal. And it looks like a lot of people have had a resounding opinion on what is going on right now with the current ceasefire proposition. And a lot of sources have been saying, like we've been covering right now, that Putin will reject the ceasefire due to Russia's strong battlefield momentum. At least that's according to an inner source of the Kremlin, and according to the publication that we were able to get from the Washington Post today, that was supposedly from European intelligence, it is going to be fairly clear that that appears to be the case for the Russians. And a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts on this, and I've got to say this: it's very rare that we give 4 options to a poll and 90% of people pick only one option on the poll. This kind of a unanimous result on any kind of a vote is actually wildly rare, and it appears that everyone so far that's watching this channel right now has absolutely no belief that the Russians are going to operate in good faith and accept this ceasefire arrangement. And so, Matthew, what are people thinking about it, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so about 87% of the audience, the overwhelming majority, said yes, Russia will reject the ceasefire due to the Russian strong battlefield momentum, or at least in Putin's words. And about 6% said it depends on the terms, and 3% said no, Russia will accept the ceasefire deal. And so far, it does not sound like this deal is going to be accepted by Russia. And right now, believe it or not, Russia really feels emboldened because they're taking Kursk back. And remember, that's already Russian territory. And it was a huge embarrassment when Ukraine was able to plow through Kursk at the rate they were plowing through there. And then they held that territory for so long. And it took the Russians ages to finally get the Ukrainians out of there. And it looks like the Ukrainians are probably on their way out of Kursk. So now that Russia's retaken most of that territory, now they feel like they really really done something here. They really haven't done anything, to be honest. They've just taken back their own place. But they feel like they're really making some progress now. So in their heads, it's go time. They do not want to stop right now, and they are probably going to reject the ceasefire as a result of that. And that probably is going to piss off the West tremendously, and will probably ensure that Ukraine is armed well into the future. So I'm definitely with the majority, and I have a feeling it's definitely going to be rejected. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, I would have to be with the overwhelming majority, the 87%, and also agree that the Russians are going to reject the ceasefire arrangement. Generally because they are going to come forward with an absurd proposition, which is going to be this. I know that this is going to be a guarantee. Now, nothing else is a guarantee. It's a 50-50 on everything else. But it's a guarantee that they're going to bring this up before they get into agreeing to a ceasefire. The Ukrainian government is illegitimate, and they want to be replaced before they ever accept a ceasefire and get into negotiations. That is a guarantee. Because over the course of the entire war, as many of you all know, Putin has made it very clear that he doesn't really recognize the Ukrainian state as a legitimate entity, and much less the Ukrainian government as an actual legitimate form of government inside of Ukraine. He has continued to insist over 3 years, and every single time we've seen an attempt at negotiations begin, he has continued to insist that the Ukrainian government is an illegitimate government, and he is unwilling to negotiate with a government that, according to the Russian Federation on an official level, doesn't have any legitimate claim to representing the nation of Ukraine or representing the national interest of the state of Ukraine, which according to him also largely does not exist, against the Russian Federation. Which means that there is almost a 100% guarantee, in my opinion, that the Russians are going to say, we will agree to a ceasefire only if the Ukrainian government that is currently in charge is completely replaced from the top down. That is most likely going to be the guaranteed breaking point on the ceasefire deal, and that means that the war will go on. One thing that we have seen that's been a little bit clear, and this is something that has only been seen after the fog of war has dissipated in the crazy, like, wild-ass negotiations that went on in between the United States and Ukraine, is that the President of the United States has largely appeared to use the statements that Zelenskyy is highly unpopular and there should be elections in Ukraine to attempt to try and gain some form of diplomatic leverage. But whenever the state of Ukraine or Zelenskyy largely agrees to the President of the United States' terms or beliefs, we can see that generally those claims subside, which is leading me to believe that the President of the United States isn't really looking to see Zelenskyy go, and I think that that might still be a breaking point there in between the West, largely the United States-led Ukrainian negotiation, and the Russian Federation, is that we're not going to be willing to accept the complete replacement of the Ukrainian government in the middle of wartime, when according to the Ukrainian constitution, legally, they cannot hold elections. So there is no way to legally replace these people without throwing them out in some form of a government coup, which was once again completely illegal and illegitimate. And once again, another thing is that that's going to be putting the United States into an incredibly bad negotiating position, just speaking about it on American terms, if the Ukrainian government is to be replaced. While the U.S. government may or may not be wildly happy with Zelenskyy, they are still pretty decently satisfied with Zelenskyy. And if Zelenskyy and his entire government that currently exists, including the entirety of the Rada, is completely thrown out and replaced, it is guaranteed that it's going to be a pro-Russian aligned government, and once again an illegally placed government at that. So with all of that put together, that means that the United States doesn't even have a position to end the war in Ukraine, because the Ukrainian government may as well already aligned itself completely to the Russians, and it will ensure that the Russians are able to achieve whatever conditions they are looking for inside of Ukraine, meaning that that is going to be a guaranteed no by the United States and Europe combined to see that Zelenskyy and the entire Ukrainian government, including the Rada, is completely ousted from power to get into a ceasefire. That just would not happen. So I have a feeling that we're going to be seeing that the war is going to be going on for a good bit longer here. But once again, though, I do want to make it clear that as far as I'm concerned, I think there is about a 70% chance that the Russians are going to reject the ceasefire. There's a 30% chance that they probably will accept the ceasefire. It's becoming less and less with each passing day and the more information that we're getting out of this. But if they do accept the ceasefire without any kinds of terms and conditions, even still, the war might not end immediately. We may not even see an extension of the ceasefire agreement. We may see that the ceasefire lapses in a month and the war gets right back to it, because the Russians could enter that ceasefire with the concept of bad faith in the negotiating process and make it incredibly clear that they're not really looking to make any kind of a agreement or compromise with the Ukrainians, but they're more so looking to try and buy themselves time to build up military abilities and then get right back into the fighting. So I have a feeling, still at this point, that the United States and Ukraine is going to be once again seeing the exact same trick that the Russians have pulled for 3 years, which is to say that they love peace and then pretty much insist that they win the war for peace. And that's going to be completely unacceptable once again. So with that, we are going to be moving on from that little bit of news and on into the Kursk Oblast, as we have been able to hear something that is a little bit interesting today as well. The Russian Federation has made ground inside of the Kursk Oblast. We're not entirely sure how they're making ground. There are two ways that they could be making ground. Either the Ukrainians are making a strategic withdrawal or largely a retreat from Kursk, or the Ukrainian front lines are starting to buckle and the Russians are making ground. It could be one or the other, and according to some sources, it appears to be the latter and not the former. But Putin has arrived inside of Kursk, the city of Kursk today, which is only about 30 miles away from the active fighting down near Sudzha itself, and appeared to make some pretty wild statements. We actually did get a video of him arriving inside of Kursk today, which we
Wait a minute. Is that Gerasimov?
It is Gerasimov.
Oh my God. It's like seeing a ghost or something. I thought this guy was on the out.
Dude, it's him and his gut. He's here. Like, he is here.
God, it's both of them in the same place at the same time.
And oh, look. Wait a minute. Putin's not wearing a suit? Kick him out of here.
Also, he's out of the bunker. That's a shock.
Dude, why in the world did he get out of that car and look like he just had horrible things happen to him in the car? He looks like he just got out and he's about to tell Gerasimov, Diddy's in there. You know, like he looks like he's terrified or something. Also, I gotta say that this looks really dumb. I mean, like, you know, like this is goofy looking, man. He's got white hair and he's wearing a Ratnik military outfit. Like, this is kind of lame. Like, actually.
Yeah, it's kind of lame, like, definitely lame. Also, why does Gerasimov look so awkward with this? Like, he was acting so weird and awkward when Putin walked up to him. He's acting like either he's extremely uncomfortable being around Putin or he doesn't even know why he's there or something.
Dude, he probably doesn't even know why he's there. They probably just whipped him out of prison to put him here for the photo op, probably. He's like, he doesn't even know what's going on in the world anymore. But then they go into the headquarters, and he shows them the Soviet propaganda posters on the wall, and they walk past. That's the exact same fan I have in my bedroom, a Hawaiian Breeze. Like, it's actually pretty decent fan, I'm not going to lie.
This way.
Oh, what?
Oh, okay, thank you. It's like the birds have made us know.
This way, we are going into the interrogation room where we have an American prisoner. Like, we will be executing him at dawn. But beyond that, we can see him walking in. And then later on, let me make sure actually to bring y'all straight to our Twitter page. So that way I can make sure to track this down for y'all exactly. Because I want to make sure that we have all of the inclusive footage. I didn't want to bulk up the map too much. But these are some of the statements that Putin also made today in the meeting with Gerasimov and everyone else about the situation in the Kursk Oblast right now. And I'm actually going to let the video play in its raw form through one go through. And then I'm going to do a second go through and read out the subtitles for all of those who may not be able to watch the stream visually right now or may not be able to see the screen. So here is the first go around of the clip.
Those people who are on the territory,
you know what? I don't even need to read the subtitles. They're reading the subtitles for us. So we're just going to let this play.
Territory of the Kursk region commit crimes against the civilian population here. Counteract our armed forces, law enforcement agencies, and special services in accordance with the laws of the Russian Federation. Are terrorists. This is how their actions are qualified by the Prosecutor General's office in Russia. And that is why the Investigative Committee of the Russian Federation initiated a criminal case against them, under these articles of terrorism. I would also like to remind you that foreign mercenaries are not subject to the Geneva Convention of 1949 on the treatment of prisoners of war.
So in other words, Putin is about to commit some war crimes, in other words. And also, by the way, is that even the real Putin right there? Like I see a lot of people saying that's not Putin, that's his body double. Honestly,
do you hear
the
how he
body double
sounded?
is. Yeah, he sounds a little higher pitched than usual, but honestly, the body double is typically not zoomed in on because they don't want you to see that's not Putin. So this guy is actually being pretty up close. So I'm 50-50 on that.
I think this might be the real Putin, like the real McCoy. I think this might be it. But also, man, listen to his voice. He sounded like a little cartoon character.
War.
Под действие Женевской конвенции 1949 года об
Man, he sounds like a little
Sounds like a
kid.
gremlin.
Yeah, we're gonna commit war crimes against you, Ukrainians and Kursk.
That's like a man. I'm telling you, he doesn't really sound that good. But beyond that, one thing that I do want to make a little bit clear, what we can get out of this, is that Putin is now designating largely the entire Ukrainian army as a terrorist force in the region, and he's also stating that there will be no quarter provided for Ukrainian armed forces, that's pretty much a very very artistic way, or a very bourgeois way of saying that they're going to be executing prisoners from this point forward. That's really what that meant. So it appears that Putin is now going to start playing hardball, and he also made it fairly clear that he doesn't believe that the war should end until the Ukrainians are pushed all the way out of Kursk, which might not even happen anytime soon, because while the Ukrainian front lines are not doing that well in the area, it may still take a couple of weeks at the best case scenario for them to be able to be pushed entirely out of Kursk at the given pace and progress that the Russians have been able to make. But beyond that, it is a little bit of an interesting thing to see these kinds of statements being made, because it is honestly almost straight down to medieval barbarism. And on top of that, it's largely starting to signal that they're not willing to end the conflict right now, because they are thinking that they're making ground inside of the Kursk Oblast, and why end it now when they're starting to win again? So a lot of people have started to talk about Putin visiting Kursk today and declaring vengeance on invading Ukrainian soldiers. And a lot of people are wondering, is Putin emboldened? And it appears that many people are saying, no, Putin is just doing propaganda. Some people are saying, yes, Putin feels really emboldened. And others are saying that it seems like a little bit. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
All right. So 55% said no, Putin does not feel emboldened and he's simply doing propaganda. And he knows that this is not really a real victory in the biggest sense of the word victory. This is more like a propaganda situation. It's a propaganda victory, and he's taking full advantage of it. So 55% said that, while 34% said yes, Putin actually does feel emboldened by retaking Kursk in some delusional sense of the word. And 7% said it seems like maybe a little bit. And honestly, I can't really tell. I would assume that Putin knows that this was a massive embarrassment, and he's probably very relieved to know that he's taken back most of Russian territory, because the Kursk invasion was a huge embarrassment, kind of like the Wagner invasion was a massive embarrassment as well. So he's probably just very relieved. And right now, he's trying to basically play this up. That's why he showed up in this military uniform, or at least his body double did, to show this on TV, to show that they are making significant progress. So I think it's propaganda. He probably doesn't really believe it, but there's no telling. He could be really that delusional. But Enforcer, what say you?
I think it's kind of a mix of the two, where he feels emboldened and it is for propaganda, because I think it's for propaganda purposes to one extent, because they're wanting to make it look like the Russians are really taking strong action to protect the Russian people, although they haven't been there for them the entire time the Battle of Kursk has been going on. Now they're only there at the end when they think they're winning. And also, it may be because Putin really does feel emboldened, and he actually thinks that these kinds of successes that they're making in Kursk are representative of the entire frontline situation elsewhere. And that's not the case. We'll be getting into that later tonight, but that is definitely not the case along most of the front line. But still, I think it actually may be a blend more so than anything. A nice blend, kind of like a Colombian blend. We'll call this one the Russian roast, because they cook quite nicely. But moving on into the Kursk Oblast, we were able to see a massive volume of information coming out today in video and picture evidence, showing us the situation that's actually going on in the area. As y'all can see, the front lines have massively changed in this direction, and it isn't exactly in the benefit of the Ukrainians. There's been a decent amount of territory lost. It does appear, however, that the Ukrainians are not willing to withdraw just yet, and it appears they're still going to try and make this a long and drawn-out withdrawal, so that way they can still try and inflict as many casualties on the Russians as possible, but it does look like the Russians are gaining ground one way or another. And moving on into the actual frontline news that we have, we were able to see the Ukrainians were bringing in air support today and then dropping hammers onto the Russians, the AASM-250, T-50s to once again hold off the Russians and inflict casualties for the Ukrainian defensive lines further beyond. And we were able to see those hammers hit that building right there, and holy moly! The damage is looking good.
The smoke is clearing. It looks like we've got some severe damage here.
Man, they leveled it. And that's the end of the clip right there. But moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see down near the area of Sverdlikovo, which is still under Ukrainian control, that a Russian fiber optic drone attempted to knock out a Ukrainian basement. Check this out. And there's the drone, and it goes in, and oh, well, it didn't blow up.
Done.
Dude, it just hit the door and went dink, and then fell right off.
That was the wimpiest like drone hit I've ever seen. Why'd the door flex like that too? What's that door made out of? It's like it dinged the door, it bent it at the top like it was like Play-Doh or something, and then it just right to the ground. Dude, look at that. What a failure.
That door actually jiggled. It's got like jiggle physics. Like when it hit, it like a saw, like like one of those like thin band saws when you like punch it or something and it goes like it like moves around, wiggles around. It kind of looks like that. But anyways, moving on from that and into some other clips, we also did get to see the Ukrainians hitting this American provided truck. It was a very unfortunate thing. And we see the fiber optic drone coming in, and oh, it didn't blow up. Well, let's try it again. Second time is the charm. Oh, well, damn. Maybe they can hit it again. I don't know. But another dud.
Bro, look at the tires on this thing, by the way. This thing's been shredded like with the tires. Also, this is just a lame duck right here. This is like the just a bad limp drone. I tell you what, it doesn't work.
Dude, this drone needs to take some Viagra. The way it's not getting any of that performance. Whoa, Jack. Well, you pretty much were alluding to it. You were alluding to it. But moving on from that and into our next clip, we did get to see that the Russians are apparently in Sudzha. We are able to understand that they are certainly within the eastern area of Sudzha, but we haven't really been able to get enough clear confirmation to show whether they're in Sudzha Central or not yet. We were able to see, however, some other clips coming out from the Ukrainians showing that they were taking some hits, at least on this Humvee in particular. This Humvee took 3 major hits and survived. Check it out. When you see one of the tires is gone, it was riding on the rims. And we can see him here talking about the Humvee and the damage that it took. And that thing really was beat up a good bit, but it did manage to make it out, surprisingly enough.
It took a beating, but it kept on ticking, as they say. The best way to do it.
Man, you just can't beat that American quality. Even the Humvees are pretty solid, crazily enough. And back in Iraq, a lot of people considered them to be death traps. So, the way the world changes. But we also were able to see a prisoner that was taken from the pipeline attack. Yeah, speaks for itself, I suppose.
Hey, come on, man. I mean, what's he doing? I mean, come on now. You might have to have a word with HR.
Man, this guy right here, he's walking around, boxers only. His face is covered in a certain kind of a paint color that may insinuate that he is much like the former Prime Minister of Canada, at least in what he gets kicks out of. And also his face under the paint, or more so the remnants of the oil in his face, makes it look like he's about to go, wow! Like he almost looks like Popeye. But beyond that,
Popeye, it looks like, look at this guy right here. He's like, hey, look, I called Popeye. And his Popeye's like, whoa, I need to go make a trip to the HR. Oh, whoa.
Man, I gotta be honest with you, man. This is one hell of a picture right here. But anyways, moving on from that, I have a feeling, y'all. I have a feeling that if this guy right here, the prisoner, was captured by the United States, I have a feeling that he would have been canceled by now for reasons. But moving on from that and on into some other news, we were able to hear that it appears that one Ukrainian soldier in the area is actually saying that it wasn't the lack of U.S. intelligence or U.S. support or anything else external of Ukraine that led to the Sudzha Sudzha situation becoming not really that good, it actually appears that he's saying that it was a measure of failed logistics. This is the original Telegram post that was, well, original Twitter post actually that was made. This is the translated one. So I'll read you all a little bit of what this Ukrainian soldier says largely was the failing inside the Kursk Oblast, which is a failing as old as time. And crazily enough, it's one that we've usually seen on the Russian side, but this time it appears that according to his analysis is more so something that the Ukrainians were responsible for. Across the Kursk region, while the Russians are running around Sudzha 2, that's what we call the part of the city with the railway station behind the bridge from the market, I've recently read an article from the Institute for the Study of War about the fact that the reason for the fall of the Ukrainian positions in the Kursk region is the shutdown of American aid in terms of satellite reconnaissance. Well, I hope that this is an IPSO aimed at our partners, which has no basis, since at such a short distance of time it would be difficult to really assess the damage from this action, and everyone understands this, since the main reason for the failures in the Kursk region is the disruption of our logistics, and the problem is far from a week old. Of course, much bigger problems started with the fall of Sverdlovsk, but it is also very difficult to stop the assaults when all our main FPV calculations in this direction were withdrawn to the territory of the Sumy region. Considering that FPV is the key weapon of this war on both sides of the front, in a situation of damaged logistics, it became almost impossible to deliver drones and warheads to them. This is not to mention the infantry, which no one withdrew anywhere or changed for a month, meaning rotated out. It is not surprising that the Russians, who threw large forces, including North Koreans, into different directions of the dubious salient with only one barely alive road for logistics, were successful in the assaults. The problems probably started even earlier when it was not possible to expand the wedging zone, leaving it initially quite narrow. Korenivo to Glushkovsky district, Novoyanovka, Sverdlovskovo, Borky, but that's history. Fortunately, many of our forces did not start withdrawing yesterday, and that is why today we do not see videos from the Russians with hundreds of our prisoners in Malaya Lignia, and in general, we have not seen a large-scale capture of our fighters, which is already good, but this does not change the fact that many had to leave on foot, walking 20 to 30 kilometers under the constant control of enemy drones. However, even today, even columns of equipment managed to break out. It is still too early to call this the end of the Kursk operation, or it's winding down. Call it maneuvering actions, and if the guys come out alive, it means they are successful. Don't be surprised later by the footage of dozens of our burnout vehicles. In most cases, the guys were saved by the armor, and the equipment itself is just a pile of metal. A separate problem, along with the blown up bridges, was the picture, as in the photograph I attached, where some roads in the Kursk region were blocked by our damaged equipment. Should the residents of Sumy worry? Living on the border with Russia, it is impossible not to worry. Will the Russians be in Sumy in 2 weeks? No, they will not. Is there a complete encirclement there? No, the group is still not cut off. The guys are fighting 24/7 to prevent this. Have our fighters broke out of encirclements? Alas, in some places it has come to this. The fighting continues and nothing is over yet. But that largely is the assessment of an actual Ukrainian infantryman, or largely an infantryman slash vlogger that is in the area. And it appears that according to his analysis, he isn't necessarily believing that the collapse of the Kursk Oblast was anything external. It more so was a failing of logistics and an inability to protect Ukrainian logistical lines because of the heavy use of Russian fiber optic drones in the area that weren't really susceptible to electronic warfare measures, meaning that the Ukrainians were not able to keep up a large amount of supply, weren't able to keep up superior firepower, or even close to comparable firepower or parity, and for that reason, they started to lose ground, and they're now getting pushed back out of the region. We've also been able to hear some additional news as well, that it appears that the Ukrainians are pulling out of Kursk, as we've been able to hear that the Ukrainian army has hinted of some of its soldiers pulling back out of the Kursk region, and we've also been able to hear a statement from Oleksandr Syrsky, which largely does start to sound like they are most likely leading to a withdrawal or beginning to retreat from the Sudzha direction. We will maintain defense in the Kursk direction as long as it is expedient and necessary. To explain to y'all, that's largely military political talk for saying that we are in the process of retreat, and we are going to be there as long as the retreat's necessary, but that does not mean, that's not really a full-on statement like we would have seen in the past, where it's trying to convey the message in a more political tone that they are going to be there for as long as they can be. Now this tone is more so conveying that they're going to be there as long as the withdrawal is being conducted, and once they are safe to pretty much run out of the area, or pretty much close the pocket that they're in right now, that would allow for them to withdraw, then that's when they're actually officially going to leave. But the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine also stated the Russians want to oust their troops from the territory of the Kursk region of the Russian Federation and transfer hostilities to the territory of the Sumy and Kharkiv regions, meaning that the Russians were trying to keep their battle groups within the area and just lightly distribute them throughout Sumy and Kharkiv to try and once again open up a new front of their own within this direction against the Ukrainians. We've already seen some limited attacks, as a matter of fact, near Konstantinivka inside of Sumy, where some Russian assaults are clearly failing, but it is showing that they are attempting to try and create already a new battlefield somewhere inside of Sumy or Kharkiv, at least to a limited extent. And we see the Ukrainian drone here already spotting the Russians on ATVs near to the border.
And they're already driving reckless. That one guy right there, look at him. He's just begging for a broken leg.
Man, he really is. Also, someone wanted to correct me and say tactical withdrawal, not a retreat. Tactical withdrawal is a fancy way of saying retreat. If you're ever falling back for any reason, that's a retreat. You can try and come up with more terms and words for it, but battle analysis is neutral. Falling back in any way is generally a retreat. That's what the word retreat means. Go look at it in the Oxford Dictionary. You will see I'm not wrong.
Look at these guys. They're hanging out while they're getting fired on. What the hell?
I don't know what's going on.
Happened?
I think someone just got dragged.
The dude fell off, and it's like he got hit with a tire. What the hell? Are they doing a clown car trick or something? They're balancing. Look, they're falling off again.
Dude, what is going on with that back vehicle?
Bro, I think they're drunk. What the hell? Look at him. I just jumped off, and now he's trying to jump back on.
I don't know what's going on.
And they're getting fired upon, by the way, so it's not like they have a rush or anything. Oh, it's a clown. Look at this clown show.
And they're now moving. They're now moving past the ruined Bahanka and now out into this open patch of dirt. It doesn't even really look like a road to be. Oh, and one of them just got hit back there. So one of them that wasn't like the drunken circus show just got hit, it appears. Now this one's turning around and going back to where it came. Now it's stopping. Now it's backing up. Now it's moving again.
What the hell?
It's doing a 3-point turn, and now it's on the move again. And now now it's going back the other way again. And now the other one's following it. And it looks like they're leaving behind the third one that got hit and appears to be burning out right now. And now they're on their way down this massive boulevard of a dirt road, I'm assuming.
Everybody's hanging on for dear life this time.
And I can't really see the vehicles. It looks like there might be one right there and one back there. Can't really tell for certain. Now we're zooming in. So yeah, we can see the vehicles.
Oh, look, they're doing the magic trick again. Oh, there's 3 of them.
Yeah, there's 3 of them now. I don't know where the third one came from because there was another one that got knocked out back there. And it looks like something may have just hit them. Actually, it looks like they're getting sprayed by machine gun fire, possibly. We now see them all hopping off.
They're bucking it. Look at them. They're hitting the bumps. They're hell no. They're over the bumps.
One of the vehicles is now smoking. It appears that everyone's dismounting the vehicles and running into the trees.
This is chaos. I don't even know what. Oh, one jumped back on an ATV. Oh, he's back and he's put it in reverse, Terry. Put it in reverse.
Put it in reverse, Terry. Put it in reverse.
Bro, what the hell are they doing? Oh.
I don't know what's going on.
Ran over by the ATV. They're running into the fire. I think they're using the smoke screen from that ATV burning to try to sneak off or something.
Oh, and they just got hit by something. It looks like it may have been a VOG or a grenade or something like that. I'm not gonna lie, man. If this is their attempt to get into Sumy, it's not really going too well.
Yeah, really. It's just a complete Sumy failure. I guess you could say that this advance is really consumey on them.
Man.
That made no sense. Don't feel bad.
Well, I was still going to laugh at it. You know, I get it.
Chuckle. Come on, buddy. Please chuckle.
Please clap. Please clap. And that's the end of that clip, but it appears that whatever that was, I don't even know if you could call that an attack, it failed. So yeah, that's the end. Honestly, someone said this looks like Syrian combat. Man, those last days of the Assad regime was quite literally the circus. I've never seen anything like it before. Everything was so confusing. Remember that clip, Matty, where people were bouncing their Hiluxes off of like berms near the side of the road and then slamming them into a tree after getting like 5 seconds of airtime?
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Dude, absolute insanity down in Syria. This is almost the same kind of a thing, really. But anyways, with that, a lot of people are talking, now that we've spoken a good deal about the situation inside of Kursk, since so many people want to talk about it. Ukraine has launched major offensives after U.S. military aid and intelligence was reinstated. And, of course, that's not in Kursk. That's everywhere else but Kursk. And a lot of people are wondering, will the war go on? And if it does, for how long? And some people are saying that it will for many more years. Others are saying that it'll be for only many more months. Some people, very small amount, are saying that the war will stop soon. And there's actually more people unsure about the answer than the amount of people saying that the war will stop very soon. So, Matthew, what are you thinking about this, and what is everyone else thinking about this as well?
All right, so it looks like most people believe, about 49% or so, said yes, it'll last for many more months, while 38% of the audience said it'll last for many more years, and only a small 6% said the war will stop soon. And it looks like to me, with the U.S. restarting military aid, and once again, Russia is not wanting to accept a ceasefire, it sounds like the stage is being set for the war to continue on status quo. Of course, there's been a lot of shakeups politically because of the U.S. trying to intervene in the situation, but ultimately it looks like that's going to fail, and it looks like there's pretty much nothing the U.S. can do to bring Russia to a stop, nor bring Ukraine to a stop either. So they've been focusing on trying to stop Ukraine, but now they can either face two options. Russia's going to make the president look like a fool if he keeps taking the side of Russia, which, he's already doing that. And if they take Ukraine's side, then the war keeps going pretty much indefinitely as long as Ukraine can keep fighting. So honestly, I'm going to have to be with the 39%. I think the war's got a year or more left on it. This is not coming to a close anytime soon until the Russian economy is brought to its knees, or if Russia somehow finds its military training and somehow starts putting it to use, which they don't have that. So probably won't be happening. So I'm with the 39%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that this war is probably going to go on for quite some time. I can't really say if it's going to go on for months or years, but I would assume that if it goes back to the original timetable we're looking at, this might go on for another year or two from now. So I'd actually have to be with the 39%. If the ceasefire isn't agreed upon, this could actually go on for quite some time here. But still, it is a pretty crazy thing to think that that's going to be the case, because I remember that many people said, I remember one guy said in particular, I'm going to end the war on day one. And now they're all the way around to, if the Russians don't accept it, we're going to turn them into a red stain. And it's going to be a red stain bigger than the one on, well, I cannot make that joke. That might not be PG enough for this show. But beyond that, it's going to be a little bit interesting to see how this turns out, because it's just crazy, honestly, like how everything's been going so far. So we'll see for the large part. We'll see. But I have a feeling they probably will go on for quite some time. But also, before we move on, I did want to get this, because some people, just a few, it was like 2 or 3 in the chat, when I said the Ukrainians were retreating from the Kursk Oblast, said, no, they aren't retreating. The retreat. The Oxford Dictionary of Languages, or the Oxford Languages Dictionary, has stated that retreat is used in the form of a verb, withdrawal from enemy forces as a result of their superior power or after a defeat, or as a noun, an act of moving back or withdrawing. So if you're calling it a withdrawal, you're pretty much saying in a synonym form, meaning that it's the very same thing, that is a retreat. It's more so an argument of semantics at that point, and really trying to sugarcoat something. I'm not really one to sugarcoat. If a force is falling back for one reason or another, and from what we're largely understanding in Kursk, it may actually be because the Russians have gotten the upper hand slightly, that is a retreat. So, like, things have to be very simple at the end of the day. You can't be like, well, it's a withdrawal. It is a tactical maneuver. Because war is all about firing and maneuvering, but even if you are winning a battle and you are falling back to be replaced by another unit, technically your unit is retreating from the line. That's not a bad thing. It's just a technical term. Or you could call it, if you want to be really sophisticated sounding, you could say that the unit is retiring from the line and it's being replaced by another one. But in a sense, it all means the same thing. You are moving backwards and away from the active fighting, which means, in more so the very deadpan kind of a stance, that's retreating. So that's pretty much what it is. So I hope that kind of addresses that somewhat well for some people who may have thought thought that withdrawing and retreating aren't the same thing, they're different. No, retreating and withdrawing, they're all the same thing. And retreating isn't necessarily a bad thing. Usually a lot of people look at a retreat as bad. Sometimes retreats are just very mundane parts of being on the front line. Like when a unit rotation happens, the unit that was on the front that's now leaving the front is retreating. That's what it is. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least in my opinion. And with that, it is time for us to move on to the questions, because we have a decent amount of questions tonight. A decent amount. And we also have a lot more news that has been going on around the rest of the world that we have to get to. So, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so our first super chat question of the night goes to Rob McGuffin, who's a longtime channel legend, and thank you very much, Rob, for that $27 support, and we appreciate it very much. That's 27 Canadian, by the way. Shout out to Canada. And they said, do you think a French nuclear attack sub, FS Tourville, surfacing at Halifax, Nova Scotia, is sending the U.S. a message over the constant threats of annexation against Canada?
It may be, but the thing is that I don't really think so, because I think that there's been a decent amount of French submarines that have arrived in Canada in the past. It's kind of, let me actually go see if I can find that. French submarine in Canada. Let me go see if I can find any stories. Let's see here. What happened to the French? Let's see here. After Macron's offered to provide, let's see here. Let's see. Let's see here. Maybe I can find an answer here. Let me see if I can. French. Let's see. Not sure. Let's see here. Let's see. I'm trying to see if I can find any information. So there was a French submarine that did visit. Let's see. So there was a French submarine that visited in 2018 in Halifax, Canada. It was a Rubis class called the Amethyst. So there has been instances very recently, just within the past few years, where French submarines have arrived in Halifax Harbor. But to show y'all a picture of the vessel, let me go get you all a picture of this. This is actually a picture of the French nuclear attack submarine Tourville arriving in Halifax Harbor, which is actually pretty neat to see. But this is a fairly mundane thing for ships of allied powers, or submarines for that matter, to visit each other and just kind of show up. Is really more so the message of good faith and goodwill. But I don't really think that this is a direct response to the United States, because so far from what we've been seeing, if the Canadians were ever to be under the nuclear protection or the protection of any other country, it appears that they're most likely going to be aligning their protection to the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, because Canada is a Commonwealth country, meaning that is a member of the Commonwealth of Nations, which is headed by the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, which means in a larger sense that while they are not in British imperial holding any longer, and they're not the Dominion of Canada, they largely do recognize in a symbolic way that the British are still largely the leader of some form of a ceremonial sphere, and it appears that the Canadians may also be trying to lean on that in the present day to possibly create some form of nuclear assurance for Canada against the United States possibly conducting an invasion. Although I still think that an invasion of Canada may be a decent unlikelihood even still. But still, it seems as more so that this arrival of the French submarine was a good faith visit, just once again amongst allies, more so than ever really trying to send a message directly to the United States. So with that, I hope that does address that at least the best I can, in my opinion. And with that, we are going to be on to the next one. But also, let's see. Also, I've seen some people. So, interestingly enough, man, it's always the weirdest things to get people going. Because I went and got the Oxford Dictionary definition for a retreat, and some people were like, no, that's not a retreat. And some people were like, withdrawing is when you walk. Well, I hate to tell you all this, but you're mostly going to be walking. Like, if you're retreating 10 miles, you're not running 10 miles with 90 pounds of gear on your back. And also on top of that, considering that most warfare is motorized or mechanized at a minimum these days, you're not even walking all that distance. You're mostly going to be getting on a vehicle and riding out. So then if you're not even walking or running, what is it called? Are you sitting retreating? Like what is that? You know, like, I don't know. But a retreat's a retreat. Like, if you are moving away from the enemy, you are retreating. That's just how it works. Like, you it's like you can call it withdrawal, you can call it whatever, but withdrawal is a synonym in that form of retreat. The Oxford Dictionary of Languages states that is clear, and the Oxford Dictionary of Languages is pretty much the most clear kind of understanding that we can have of words in the English language. So if they're wrong, then I don't know who would be right, because they pretty much lay down the law on what a word means, or if there's any comparable or similar words to it. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well again. And with that, we are on to the next one. A huge thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, Rob McGuffin. And I got to thank you massively for that once again. And also, man, I like this one person, man. You just addressed him, Matthew. Like, they just say, you're just wrong. No explanation. Source, none. Like, it's like, you got to give me something more than that. Like, you got to. But anyways, with that.
Also, by the way, I thank you for your withdrawing, retreating, or whatever word you want to use. When you leave, you have to fight your way out. Like, there's no way to just simply take off running and not fight, because otherwise you're going to get mowed down by the enemy. So you got to lay down some fire, or the enemy's going to run up on you as you're running off. So, I think you're fighting out either way.
Yeah, I mean, like also some people say, well, no, a retreat's unplanned, a withdrawal is planned. Well, in the Napoleonic Wars, it was a plan of the Russians to just keep withdrawing, if you want to call it that, deeper into Russia until Napoleon stretched the supply lines so thin that they could start to attack his supply lines and pretty much starve his army to death, through attacking the supply lines and not directly the Grand Army of France. And at the end of the day, people call that the Great Russian Retreat. It's not called the Great Russian Withdrawal, it's called the Russian Retreat, because if you're moving away from someone, even if it's planned, it's a retreat. That's just what it is. I mean, like, you can try, I see someone, like, the person who's really, like, getting deep into this, they're like, I was in the army. Look, I hate to say this, but sometimes the army doesn't get, like, the actual definition of words right. Like, not to say, like, anything more than that, but just because the army says that withdrawal and retreat is two different things, it may be two different things for them, but according to everyone else in the world, including the Oxford Dictionary of Languages, withdrawal and retreat are the exact same thing. There's no differentiation in between whether they were planned or not planned or anything. If you're moving away from the enemy, it is a retreat. It's not a good or a bad thing, it's just what you're doing. So with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least the best I can. I don't know why in the world this is like a contentious thing, but anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next super chat goes to another channel legend. This time it is Purple Gerbil. It is the Purple Gerbil who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Mr. Gerbil, for that $20 support and helping to keep the channel running. And they said, do you think Russia just got played in Kursk and is up to some big surprise? And LSA forever.
I'm not going to lie, Purple Gerbil, that's a great question, and it may actually end up showing that they were kind of played, because we are not entirely sure exactly why the Ukrainian front lines are starting to recede in this area, or the Ukrainians are beginning to retreat from the area. But one thing that I'm thinking that actually might have been a smart move, and the Ukrainians may be playing him, is that they're giving Putin this false concept of success. So it's going to embolden Putin to say, well, if I'm sitting here and I'm winning in Kursk, which to Putin, if he's winning in one place, he's winning in all of them mentally. Why in the world am I ever going to agree to a ceasefire? Because now I can just win the war by pushing them back. And that might be what Putin is actually thinking. So we might actually see that in the long run, the Ukrainians are playing the Russians by doing this. And once again, I want to remind everyone, this isn't some sort of a trap that's happening in Kursk where the Ukrainians are going to swing some sort of a trap door. It's quite literally, quite legitimately a retreat. But beyond that, the fact of the matter is that it's going to embolden Putin enough that on a diplomatic level, not on the tactical or the strategic level, but on the diplomatic level, he may refuse the ceasefire agreement or go in with such ludicrous terms that nobody will ever agree to a ceasefire under Russia's terms, meaning that the war will go on, and Ukraine has just assured that no one is going to look at the Ukrainians anymore as the aggressor state somehow. It is going to be clear the Russians are the aggressor state. They invaded Ukraine in 2022, and they are adamant that they are going to win exactly the way they want to win, and they are going to have victory in Ukraine at all costs, and they're not going to accept anything less. And that's going to be how people are going to view the conflict from this point forward across the board. And not only that, that is going to make it incredibly clear to many people that's why the war has gone on so long. It's not because Ukraine hasn't wanted to end the war. It's because the Russians are dishonest about ending the war. They want to win. That's the only reason they want the war to end. Because many people could have made the exact same statements of Hitler. Oh, Hitler is a peace-loving guy. I mean, he doesn't want war. He's as peaceful as a dove. If the Soviet Union would just unconditionally surrender to Germany, there wouldn't be any bloodshed anymore. The war would be over. That's pretty much the exact same thing that Hitler was working under. And you could easily make the argument, like people are making for Putin these days, that Hitler was truly a peace-loving guy. But the reality of it is very different. It's not peace for the sake of peace. It's peace in the sake of victory, which means that the only way to achieve a peace with Hitler was to be completely defeated or just to give in entirely to whatever demands he had. And that isn't a peace. That isn't a peace at all. That is a victory being disguised as a peace, which is not at all acceptable to anyone. So I hope that does address that well, at least in what I'm seeing right now. But Purple Gerbil, I think you might be dead on the nail. I think that might legitimately be the Ukrainians playing the Russians into a trap of their own design, which is going to work out incredibly well for them, especially on the public perception side of things. And considering that Ukraine largely relies almost entirely on foreign military support from the European Union and the United States, this is going to be galvanizing and polarizing everyone to be against the Russians because of how clearly it's going to be perceived that they do not really want peace, and any statements about them wanting peace are just flat out lies. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. In my opinion, Purple Dribble, thank you once again for the massive support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, it appears that we have had a poll, and it is a military retreat different than a withdrawal. And interestingly enough, oh, the poll is literally dead split. Actually, it just stopped being dead split, but it's nearly dead split. So Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking as well?
Okay, so since this became such a point of discussion, I ran a poll on it. Is a military retreat different than a withdrawal? And it looks like about 45% said no, it's synonymous terms, while 46% said yes, it's a different action. And basically, the poll's now split once again. So it looks like half the audience thinks that it's different and half the audience thinks it's synonymous. So I was not expecting this. Honestly, I don't see much difference between the terms. If you say a planned retreat or a planned withdrawal, that makes it planned. And if you say a sudden retreat, that indicates they probably ran off. So I don't see a difference. I think they're synonymous terms. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that they're synonymous terms. Retreat is moving away from the enemy. That's what it is. And also, some people are saying a retreat is forced. No, a retreat isn't forced. Just to make this clear again, the Russians in the Napoleonic War never retreated because they were defeated. Like sometimes they were, like at the Battle of Borodino, but most of the time they retreated on their own, like without any provocation by the French army. They would just withdraw. Or retreat, either way you want to put it. And the French would just continue to move deeper and deeper into Russia. There was really no just getting their asses kicked and then running away kind of a thing. That would be a rout, more so at that point. Well, that would be a disorganized retreat. An organized retreat could be called a withdrawal, but nevertheless, it's all a retreat. That's what it is, like, as far as I see it. So I would say that they're both synonymous terms, at least in my opinion, because it doesn't really matter. Honestly, it's trying to soften up the wordage because, once again, for all we know, the Ukrainians are actually being defeated by the Russians right now and they're retreating. Or they're conducting a planned retreat where they're leaving the area and then relocating their forces to a different position somewhere inside of Ukraine, which still to me is a retreat. It's not, doesn't really matter either way. To me, it seems to not really make that much of a difference. If they're moving away, they're moving away. It doesn't matter if I try and sweet talk it and call it a withdrawal or call it a retreat. That's how I look at it for the large part. So with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least in my opinion. But it's very interesting, man, what becomes like a big discussion on the show, man. I'm not even kidding. Like, remember when I said, the A10 isn't really that good anymore, and it started like a slaughter. Like, it's interesting because this kind of has done almost the same thing. But to me, they're the same thing. Potato, potato. You know, some people view retreat negatively. I view it as a very indifferent kind of a thing. But you know, if we wanted to, we could pull up an endless amount of historical examples of people saying that these forces retreated from the field and they weren't even defeated; they just left or withdrew, if you want to call it that, and they still called it a retreat. Because
I think people are viewing retreat as like routing off the battlefield or like taking off running batshit scared. That's what people are thinking the term retreat means. I don't think that is a catch-all term for that because a rout or running off the battlefield and basically abandoning post that is not necessarily retreat from what I know. So obviously I wasn't in the military, but it would make sense to me just based on the word retreat. That means basically withdrawing, which is once again synonymous. So if someone says, let's retreat, that doesn't mean they're taking off and running. They might just fall back a little bit and regroup. That doesn't mean they're taking off and, abandoning their post.
Yeah, like that's also I saw someone say you could say retire. Yeah, retire is pretty much retreat at the end of the day as well. Because it's like I can find a whole bunch of examples. Like, for example, loads of battles in the English Civil War. And once again, English has evolved a lot, but this is the terms that were used in the 1650s. Retreat and retire were almost interchangeable. Like, there had to be some context given to the retreat. Like, we broke their lines and they retreated from the field. Or the battle started to get later in the day and the sun began to set and the forces retreated from the field. Like, at that point, they're using retreat in both terms, or they could use retire in the last term interchangeably, but they really had to have some context behind it to know if the retreat was just because they were moving away from the enemy for other reasons, or if they had been completely defeated and then they were running from the field. And even then you would most likely use the term, we routed them from the field. But retreat's just generally like a catch-all term. But you can get all in depth and really start splitting hairs with what terms are what and where and how to use them and why. But retreat's a retreat. If you're moving away from the enemy, to me, it's the same thing. It doesn't matter if you're moving away to reposition. It doesn't matter if you're moving away because you were defeated. It's a retreat. So with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. But we are going to be getting on to the last question of this segment and then moving on into the rest of the news. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so our last one of the segment goes to none other than Lord Cog, who just threw in a massive $100 donation. And thank you very much, Lord Cog, for the largest super chat of the night. And seriously, big thanks. That is the support that helps keep the channel running. And it's through that viewer support that this entire stream can be possible every single night. So thank you very much, Lord Cog, for once again supporting Big League. And they said, thank you.
And I got to thank you for the massive support, Lord Cog, and helping this channel to keep on running. That is huge support, and you are helping us to keep this channel running and rolling. It is folks like you who have made our coverage possible for years on end. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running. And so with that, a massive thanks to you so much once again. I got to say that is incredibly huge support. And of course, once again, Lord Cog, we thank you massively. You're helping us to keep our lights on and pay the bills and helping us to do this as a full-time job. And so with that, big massive thanks to you once again. And it's now time for us to move on into the rest of the news. We still have a lot. Like, crazily enough, there's still loads to cover. Moving on.
Hold on the word retreat, and we got a lot of news left. What you doing, man?
Man, what are we doing? What are we doing? But also one second. One second. I want to just. Someone said something, and I actually did not know this, so I want to make sure that we get this right. We get this right. You see. Let's see. Hang on. Hold up. I want to make sure. Hold up, wait. Hold up, wait. Hold up. Someone actually threw in something that's interesting. So, let's see. So here we go. So I actually didn't know this, but there was a lot more detail.
We're still on it. We're
just one more thing, because someone brought up something. I was like, I didn't even know that, but that actually is a pretty good point. The old French word this is just to give you a little bit of a summary here. In 1066, something big happened for the English language, which was the Battle of Hastings, where William the Bastard ended up taking the throne of England, became William the Conqueror, and since he was a French Norman from his kingdom in Normandy, he brought French with him because he didn't speak English. So there were a lot of French words that were pretty much taken on by the English, or taken on by English nobility to be used later on. And according to what we see right here, it is from Old French, which is retraite, which is a noun, and from Latin, which is retrahere, which means to pull back. So in a general sense of the term, retreat is retreat. You're just pulling away from something. It doesn't mean you were beaten badly or anything like that. The actual very basic origin of the word means that you're just moving away from something. So with that, there we go. We now have gotten that rabbit hole knocked out. So that appears to be the very, very beginning of the word, and it doesn't have any negative connotation to it or any kind of a deep explanation. But we are going to be routing from this topic or conducting a retreat from the topic. We are going to be moving away from it and moving on into Taiwan, as we have been able to hear that they're going to be conducting their first immediate response drills this next week. It's the first time the Republic of China Army has ever done anything like this. And I wonder if they're going to be retreating to the field. I'm just kidding. But moving on from that and down into Australia, we've also been able to hear that a small flotilla of Chinese vessels, around 3 of them, have circled the entirety of Australia, or as we would call it, Oceania, or Australia for the large part, because Oceania also includes New Zealand. But beyond that, they have completely moved out of the Australian exclusive economic zone at this point, but it is interesting to see that they were conducting a low-level coercion effort where they were trying to encircle the Australians and possibly intimidate the Australian government. Moving on from that, we also were able to hear that the French are going to be seizing Russian assets, as the French National Assembly has adopted a resolution that calls for the seizure of frozen Russian assets. And it appears...
Oh, Vivi, we're going to take their apartment. Oh, yes, we sell it for some money. We're going to take their vehicles, Rolls Royce, and go and sell it on the market. Yes, that's indeed. Oh, oui.
Ha ha! We take their shitty Lada and we sell it for Bugatti, and we get better car. But beyond that, moving on from that little bit of news, and now into the war in Ukraine once more, we are going to be going on down into Krasnodar as another major Ukrainian drone attack started to cause significant damage to the Russians overnight. And that's the end of the clip right there. But moving on from that and into our next clips up in Voronezh, we were also able to see the same thing happening in Voronezh at the same time. Also, someone said, that's crazy that William was called a bastard. Yeah, it's kind of crazy how that worked back then. Like, you just be called a bastard and that just was what it was. Like, people actually just said, oh yeah, that's William, the bastard. Or William, the idiot. It's like, that's just what people called each other back then. It's like, that's kind of a little wild, you know? Dude, he got disrespect on his name until he went and killed Harold, the King of England. And then he finally got called something rather than a bastard. But moving on from that, we also got to see the fires in Voronezh from another angle. We can hear the air defense fire in Voronezh. Doesn't really sound like there's any pansiers in Voronezh. Sounds like machine gun fire.
Oh, oui. It exploded.
Oh, it looks like there was an attack. Oh, and there was an impact out there in the distance. And a little boom. And then we get to see the fire again. It's another video. It's the same one. Oh!
Oh, the dog's chiming in.
Man, that dog. It's like, man, that thing knows what's up. We don't know exactly what's been hit yet in Krasnodar or Voronezh, but we're going to be trying to get more info on that soon. Meanwhile, we were also able to hear that French AWACS are now operating inside of the Black Sea. Take a gander at those Dassault Rafales, or Rafales that are in the area. Take a look at them. Aren't they wonderful looking? Beautiful aircraft. Beautiful aircraft.
Very nice. I noticed that they sort of stayed off to the left a little bit. They didn't really venture too far over toward the right or toward Russia, it looks like. But it was a good attempt.
Man, I like how their call signs is FAF. So it's like F around, find, and then they left out the out. So it's like, I like that. I like that. But moving on from that and on into the rest of the news that we have, we were able to hear the air defense, well, not really the air defense report, but there was a thing over the skies of Kyiv. We don't know if this was a meteorite or what. It doesn't actually appear that it was a Russian missile or a drone, but there it was. Some people
that set off an air raid siren, by the way. They're not really sure what it is, like you're saying, but it set off the air raid sirens. They were playing it safe, but I think it was a meteor, I think.
Yeah, it's a little bit weird. Ukraine's getting pelted by everything. Missiles, drones, meteors, anything. The Russians, they got a secret space control weapon. They're flinging meteors at Kyiv. They can do the same to Washington or something like that. But moving on from that and into our location unknowns, we were able to see a Russian falling off a motorcycle. It was very entertaining. There he is up there. And it looks like he's riding through dirt on the road. Anyone who has any motorcycling knowledge knows that's a bad idea. Oh, and there he went. He ate it. Oh my God. Dude, tumbled.
What the hell did he hit?
I don't know, dude. I don't know, but I have a feeling he's hurting right now. But moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see some new Ukrainian drones. These are the ones that carry anti-tank mines. They're continuing to up the firepower on these things, and this is largely just your normal FPV drone, but they've been souped up enough with enough juice that they can actually carry around an anti-tank mine under them. So watch out, Russians. Some guy on a motorbike is about to get hit with an anti-tank mine, and it's not going to be a good day for him. But moving on from that little clip and on into our next one, we also got to see an RPG stuck in a Cossack. There it's the RPG. There's the grate in front of the Cossack, and it's just stuck. Like, that's all there is to it. Pretty basic
That's
deal.
good for saving, I guess. You can just take that off, sort of like, stash it away and use it again.
You've added +1 RPG-7 to your inventory. It's like, man, look at that. Oh, look, I don't think you can actually use that. It looks like it bent at the front.
Oh, yeah, just the front bent.
Man, sad. Moving on from that and out of that little picture, it's now time for us to get to the Russian casualty report. And holy moly!
Holy moly! Look at that. They got 2 more Bobcat skid steers. I'll tell you what. Also, there's a bot over there. Of course, you got to have a bot. Someone said, bullshit! Like the political crazy outrage. Bitch! They went crazy. But anyways, 2 Bobcats. And Enforcer, tell us more.
Man, these people are going to be seething when the Russians reject the ceasefire. It's like, I don't even know what they're going to do at that point. Like, I guess they're just going to say, you know what, Russia deserves to win. Like, it's not even going to be about peace anymore. It's just going to be about the Russians winning because they're actually pro-Russian. But moving on from that, I'd have to say that that there has been a decent amount of losses, and Miss Disa, keeper of the records, has been able to keep a nice account of everything that's been going on in the casualty report. The troop losses rise by 130 and above the 7-day average of 1,199, which was a good year. Y'all know about the year 1,109, the year of things that happened. I actually do not know exactly what happened in the year of 1,199, but let's see. Richard the Lionheart, King of England, died on April. Oh, well, that wasn't that great of a year, I guess. Richard the Lionheart, who was a pretty famous English king, died that year. but moving on from that, all other categories are below averages after a big day yesterday. Very sad, but still, the losses were pretty decent. 1,430 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 7 APCs, 69 supply trucks. Nice. 3 main battle tanks.
Very nice.
Very nice. 44 artillery systems, 111 drones, 1 MLRS, and 2 Bobcat skid steers. It was a pretty good day. All things respective. But moving on from that and out of that little casualty report right there, it is time for us to move on down into those front lines. And there wasn't actually a lot of frontline footage today, I'm not going to lie. So moving all down into the only 2 things that we got a general frontline synopsis showing that the Ukrainians are still making ground. We were able to see that they took a little bit of Torertsk, they took a little bit of Novoselivka, then they also took a little bit of the northern area of Kupyansk near Liman-Pershi. So it does appear that the Ukrainians are still making ground, and the Russians, they weep. We also got to see a Ukrainian helicopter conducting a fire support mission near the Pokrovsk. And look at him
Give
go.
it to him. Give it to him. Send it.
And here comes the second. Man, that is just so cool as they start brush fires below. Like, it's so cool.
Yeah.
But that's the end of the clip, and really cool to see. And moving on from that, that's actually, then we're going to be moving right on back up to Kyiv. It's time for the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on this very day of the war. And so, without further ado, here is the speech, and thank the Lord, it is a long-lasting speech. So, without further ado, here's the speech.
Speech.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Провів сьогодні ставку технологічну. Ставку передусім щодо наших дронів, далекобійних ударів українських дронів. Провели аналіз застосування нещодавно, якість ударів, результати застосування, найбільш ефективні зразки дронів. Були і військові, і урядовці, головне, наші виробники дронів та іншої зброї. Багато технічних деталей встигли обговорити сьогодні. Ключове – треба збільшувати можливість нашої зброї долати російський РЕП та протиповітряну оборону. Звісно, ми говорили і про те, як ще наростити виробництво, ще потрібні контракти, фінансування, інвестиції від наших партнерів. Виробники пропонували конкретні технологічні рішення. За 10 днів ми повернемось до цих питань, потрібні відповіді на все, що звучало сьогодні. Наше українське виробництво дронів і постійна модернізація дронів – це одна з ключових частин системи стримування Росії, яка потрібна для гарантування безпеки України. Довгостроково, і також це буде наша міжнародна перевага. Те, як ми зможемо експортувати безпеку після цієї війни. Вже зараз величезний інтерес наших друзів у світі до українських розробок, до наших можливостей, наших технологічних виробництв. Українці показали у цій війні, як багато можуть робити дрони для захисту позицій та збереження життя людей. Показали, як важливо постійно розвивати безпілотну складову. Звісно, це буде нашою, в тому числі і економічною перевагою у відносинах з іншими партнерами. Але після війни. Зараз нам потрібно значно збільшувати ефективність застосування української зброї. І все, що буде досягнуто для української безпеки зараз, працюватиме на Україну протягом років і десятиліть. Водночас продовжуємо нашу роботу і на дипломатичному напрямку для того, щоб якнайшвидше забезпечити всі необхідні умови для тиску на Росію, для реального миру. Очікую доповіді української делегації, що працювала в Саудівській Аравії, і готуємо нові завдання для нашої дипломатії. Потрібно рухатись до миру, потрібно рухатись до гарантій безпеки. Потрібно звільняти наших людей. Ми налаштовані працювати максимально швидко з нашими партнерами. Головне – це здатність наших партнерів забезпечити готовність Росії не обманювати, а реально завершувати війну. Зараз російські удари не припиняються. Щоночі під сотню шахедів проти України. Постійно ракетні удари. І є, на жаль, влучання по нашій цивільній інфраструктурі, по портах, зокрема в Одесі. І вчора там було ураження цивільного судна. Якраз вантажили пшеницю. Напрямок Алжир. Люди загинули, громадяни Сирії. Мої співчуття. Були також поранені, їм надано необхідну допомогу. Будь-яке намагання Росії петляти буде чітким доказом для всіх, що саме Росія не хоче миру. З чіткими висновками світу. Я дякую всім, хто допомагає нам захищати життя і хто працює заради надійного гарантування безпеки. Зараз час, коли багато що вирішується. Я дякую всім, хто допомагає. Слава Україні!
And Slava. And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on this very day of the war, 1113. And with that in mind, it is time for us to move on into the next segment of the stream where we get to talk to each and every single one of you. And of course, we cannot wait. It is a fun segment. It's a fun segment for many, quite a large, numerous number of people. And hopefully we will see that the internet doesn't go out tonight in the middle of the question segment like it did last night. What a crazy thing. But, Matthew, nevertheless, take it away. What do we got?
All right, so it's time for the final question segment of the night. We have no more polls to address. We are fresh out of the polls. I think the last poll that we ran probably broke the whole system when we asked about withdrawal versus retreat. So the polls have now retreated for the night. But anyways, moving on to our super chat questions here. The first one we have in the last question segment goes to Eric Horner, LSA, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Eric, for that $20 support and helping to keep the channel running. So, of course, we appreciate it very much. And Eric said, can I get an LSA in the chat? And I appreciate the work you guys put into the stream every night. Enforcer 2040, Enforcer Matt for Vice President. Hey, he said LSA for the rest of the cabinet jobs.
And I thank you so much for the support, Eric Garner. And I got to thank you so much once again. And can we get an LSA in the chat? Can we have the whole chat flooded with LSAs? Come on, folks, you can do it. I believe in you. But beyond that, I got to say, Chris, hopefully we'll be able to see that the entire live chat is filled with LSAs here in a moment. Thank you so much for enjoying all the effort and hard work that we put into these streams all the time. We try our best. We try our darndest. And I hope that tonight we tried our darndest to get down to the bottom of things, the bottom of what's going on in Kursk, what's going on with the ceasefire, what's going on with retreat. What does it mean? What is it doing? Let's talk about buttered retreat. Let's talk about buttered retreat. Why is it here? What is it doing? Get it out of my face. Let's talk about buttered sausage. But beyond that, I got to thank you so much once again for the support, Eric Kress, and helping this channel to keep on running. Look at that. That chat is filled with LSAs. It's beautiful. It's patriotic. It is grand, really, I have to say. And I see Matthew say LSA. Oh, that's a good one, Matthew.
Man, I tell people at the end of my videos sometimes, I say, put LSA in the chat if you watch to this point in the video. And some people go down there and literally type LSA, like ELLSAY. I'm like, what are you doing? LSA. I mean, I put a heart on it anyway, honestly. I put the little heart on it because they gave it an A for effort, I must say.
Man, I gotta say, also Matthew, ban Enforcer Matt, he was spamming in the chat. Where's he at?
Me? Oh, you talking about me?
Who, me? Like, it's, yeah, you. Get him out of here.
You know, Nightbot quit, by the way. Like, Nightbot actually left, like he's gone.
What do you mean?
Like, it quit. Like, a Nightbot just quit, and it's not in the chat, and it's I can't find it.
Huh, that's wild. Okay. Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you know what? That's a little weird. I haven't seen Nightbot at all tonight either. Can we add Nightbot? Well,
no, he's not here at all. Like, Nightbot's gone. Like, I think he literally threw in the jacket and left.
What a little bastard. We've let him be here for years, and he just quits on us like that? Not even a notice?
We paid him good.
We pay him nothing, and he'll like it. Like, it's like, and he'll be here, and he'll be, moderating the chat. Nightbot's gone. Nightbot's gone. It's not here anymore, folks. Like, I don't know what's happened, but for the first day I've ever seen, it's just not in the chat. I don't know what. Honestly, man, we need to get down to the bottom of that. I don't know what's up with that.
Yeah, I think the last thing that was said between us and Nightbot is Nightbot was asking for something called full-time work, so that way he could get benefits. And we said, oh, no, you're a part-time worker. You work your way up to full-time. And we never heard from him since. He's gone tonight.
We actually heard that the Nightbot joined the union, so we banned it.
The union, that would do it too.
Yeah, it tried to unionize, so we of course fired him before he could unionize, and then we immediately went through the rest of the workplace, which is just Matthew and me, and we forced him to sit down and listen to those training videos where they're like, "Look, you don't need a union. You're fine with us. Like, you're better off alone." Like we did that kind of a thing. So Nightbot's not here anymore. But we will be trying to get down to the bottom of it. All jokes aside, Nightbot is a automated assistant that helps us out a lot. So we will be seeing what's up with that, because Nightbot should have been working tonight, but maybe the Nightbot system was down. I don't know, but we'll have to find out. But anyways, it is time for us to keep this thing rolling. But I do thank you for the support once again, Eric, in helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running. And of course, make sure to vote for Enforcer and Enforcer Matt for president and vice president in 2040. We're going to be giving a good run of it. And I'll be having Matthew sitting over there on the couch in the Oval Office, and we're going to bring up a leader of a foreign country, and Matthew's going to say, "Well, did you at least say thank you?" And we will start the ambushes.
I won't be doing that. I'll be the guy that hangs out in the Oval Office, and you really don't see me on camera, but if you look closely in the reflection of those pictures on the wall, you'll see me lurking in the background somewhere, like another fellow that likes to wear T-shirts in the Oval Office and have kids' white boogers on desks.
It is illegal to not buy a Tesla car. But moving on from that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. But thank you once again for the support, Air Corner, and helping this channel to keep on running. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
You know, I want to have, like, in Scooby-Doo, how they had those, like, paintings on the wall that the eyeballs would move and somebody would be looking through the painting. I want one of those paintings installed in the Oval Office. That way I don't have to, like, walk in the room. I can just, like, look through the painting and the eyeballs start moving around and I can just see what's going on. That's what I want. That would be fantastic, by the way. We got to have that. But anyways, jumping into our next super chat here. This one goes to Purple Gerbil. Once again, it throws in the second super chat of the night. And thank you very much, Purple Gerbil, for the $20 support once more. And we appreciate that very, very much. And Purple Gerbil said, please take a live chat in LSA forever.
And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Purple Gerbil. You've been around for quite some time, and we've just started to recognize that gerbils are purple. But nevertheless, I thank you so much once again for your second support of the night, and we will make sure to take a live chat in your honor, Purple Gerbil. But before we do, long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so the live chat question is going to go to, let's see here, Activista, who said, so at what point do we decide that Putin is being Saddam'd by his advisors?
I don't know. I don't really know if they do that, really. But we could always give it a shot, and if they did do it, I think that that point would be when they make it very clear that they're not looking for an end to the war, which probably will be very soon. I think that's when we ought to just start moving down that course of action, possibly, just start looking at that a little bit. But anyways, I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least in our opinion. And I thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, Purple Triple, we wouldn't be able to answer live chat questions like that. But you know something, Matthew? You know something that I was just thinking about? It just hit me, Matthew. It just hit me. Purple Gerbil, gerbils, transport, planes. Aircraft. We're not going to talk about trains. We're going to talk about planes, Matthew. But you know something that's actually very interesting, Matthew, is that there is a wide variety of international airports inside the United States of America. Did you actually know, Matthew, a fun fact, the United States of America has more airports on the register than any other country in the world. I think most of them combined.
I didn't know that, actually. I did not know that.
We have 41,000 active airports in the United States of America, and most of them are within the state of Texas.
Well, that's insane, actually.
It is crazy, isn't it? It is absolutely insane. And speaking of one of the...
Well, here's a piece of news. Here's a piece of trivia, a piece of question. Where is the headquarters hub for American Airlines? And where's the hub for Delta?
Well, the hub for Delta would be in Atlanta, Georgia, at the Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson the Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. And I know that because their flight museum is right here next to their headquarters, which is literally right across the street. And they have their little museum here for their airline. Look at it. Isn't it precious? Isn't it cute? They have all their little planes here from their company's history. Isn't that just adorable? But anyways, the headquarters for American Airlines is actually in Dallas.
That is correct. It's at the Dallas-Fort Worth International. Yes, it is here. I saw it because they have their hangars out there on the sides of the runway. But also, so where's the corporate head? Well, not the corporate headquarters. The actual headquarters for the airport for Spirit. Where's that at?
Oh, that ought to be in Chicago or Detroit.
What makes you say that?
Well, it just seems like it would be.
I don't even know. Where is it?
I don't know. Let's find out. Headquarters.
Is it illegal to ask trivia questions without knowing the answer, or is it not?
Yeah, it's executable by firing. Dania Beach, Florida, in Miami.
Wait a minute. Is that where the airline offices are at, or is that where the airport is?
It's in the what?
What's their hub? I guess would be the better question.
Headquartered in Dania Beach, Florida, in the Miami metropolitan area. I don't think they actually are allowed to pretty much like be on an airport because they're too broke for that. So I think they just have like an office in Dania Beach, Florida, and that's where they run everything from. But I guess the closest airport that they would be near is the Miami International Airport, maybe.
I guess. I guess.
I suppose. That's interesting, though. That's interesting. You know, Matthew, there's another airline that we forgot to ask about, Matthew. United Airlines. You know, the people who shove your dogs into the overhead bins and all that kind of a deal. Where are they
Are they
from?
still around? I didn't even know they were still around.
Let's see. Did they merge? Let's see. Actually, yeah, they're still around.
Huh, that's weird. I've never really like focused on them.
Me either. You know, you just kind of forget about them because to me it's like Delta, American, and that's it. Like I don't ever think of United. But they're still around. Honestly, their livery is not really anything to write home about, to be entirely honest. But let's take a look. Where are they headquartered? Chicago, Illinois.
Ah, yes, Chicago, known for its excellence.
The Chicagoans. They've always been known for their excellence. There is a Michiganian city inspired by that Chicagoan excellence, and it is called Detroit.
The wood grain on those Dracos is of the highest quality.
It is vintage dated. Like it's like those
Dracos are historical, I guess you could say, brought from the vault of history in the making from Chirac.
The brims are created in a sweatshop in China, and like the best Nike shoes, like they're Nike stamped. But anyways, moving on from that, let's see what do we know? Let's see. Oh, hubs. So this is Chicago O'Hare is their hub for the Midwest. Let's see. So let's see. They have a hub at Houston. Let's see. They have a hub in L.A. They have a hub in Newark. San Francisco. They also have one at Washington Dulles International Airport, which isn't Ronald Reagan. It's actually a little bit further away. So this is Ronald Reagan, which is what a lot of people would think of as an international airport for Washington. And, well, actually, it's not an international airport. It's a national airport. How bizarre. I just realized that. But Washington Dulles out here is the international airport. So international flights come here. Regional flights go there for the large part, or just really national flights. So that's actually interesting. Just learned something new right there. But
also,
yeah.
Here's another trivia question. So you know how Air Force One takes off from Andrews, right? That's where it takes off from when it's in D.C. Of all places.
Mm-hmm.
So when it heads down to the resort, the second home, which is not Camp David, it's Mar-a-Lago. What airport does it go to land at? Where's Air Force One housed?
Isn't it the Boca Raton Airport?
No, it's not that one. That's wrong.
Wait. It's at the West Palm Beach International Airport, isn't it? This one.
Yes. It goes here, actually. Whenever Air Force One is here at Palm Beach International, they put in flight restrictions over the area. And also you have to do some extra precautions when you're taking off because you can't go near Air Force One that's parked over in its own special area. I don't know exactly where they park it. It's probably over there near West Star Aviation in the bottom left corner. But it's somewhere over there they park it. And they have to have Secret Service around it at all times and things like that. And then he drives all the way over to Mar-a-Lago out there on that section of Palm Beach that's very, very nice and expensive.
Oh,
there's the whole plane. It's stuck right there.
It's just sitting out in the open. What do you know? But isn't that kind of stupid? I'm not gonna lie. Isn't that kind of stupid? Because I guess if you have a private jet, you're just screwed the whole time Air Force One is there. You can't take off. You can't land there. You can't do anything. Because
no, you can take off. You just have to go through a lot of extra hoopla to go through with it.
They check in, but they can't check out. It's like, man, that's honestly kind of messed up. But where in the world is that place, anyways? Oh, wait, no, that's not it. Where in the world is
it's
this?
Down at the bottom. I think it's right there, actually. It's right here.
Oh, yeah, look there. Dude, this thing's honestly kind of like crammed up. They always make it look like it's in the middle of nowhere, but there's like houses on all ends.
That's some expensive land right there, though. It's crammed up, but that's a very large piece of real estate right there. Very expensive. Probably worth at least $200 or $300 million, I would assume. Even though some people dispute that, it's very valuable.
Dang, it actually looks pretty nice down here. I've never actually looked at this on Google Maps before. But that actually, dude, that's like a little like a postcard that you would send from that area. That's actually pretty nice, actually. But anyways, this looks terrible. The backwater here. Let's look at it.
No, it looks fine in person.
Oh yeah, that actually looks fine, dude. From here though, that looks like murky hell, man. Like if you fell in that water, you might catch a disease or something.
Yeah, I mean, the map makes it look bad, but it actually looks pretty good here, like, when you look at it this way. I would like to see this area down here. Like, I would like to see it in person.
You know, maybe one day we will be able to see it. You know, one day. Hey, wait a minute, is this a railroad line? Oh, no way, there's got to be a station around here for Brightline, right? Like, there's got to be one around here somewhere. Where the hell is it? Oh, there it is, West Palm Beach, baby! Oh, wait, hey, who services this?
Brightline.
Yeah, Brightline only. Brightline only. That's interesting. You would think that Amtrak would service West Palm Beach, but oh well. Anyways, that's the Brightline train. There's the station, Brightline West Palm Beach. There's Brightline train. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Oh, no, wait a minute, hang on. Let me go look at Amtrak's map, because I swore that at some point they serviced West Palm Beach. Amtrak service map. Well, yeah, they service West Palm Beach. It says it right there. But I guess it's not the same station. Where in the world did they go then? Because it's like if they have, like this is the main line going through the area. So it's like if you're not going through there, and Amtrak isn't stopping there, where did they stop in West Palm Beach? That's the question that I now intend to answer. And
where's the slums at? Like, is there slums around West Palm Beach, or is that not really a thing?
You would be too poor to be in the slum. They force you out because this is for the billionaires only, and millionaires. But let's see. Oh, wait a minute. That's a bus stop. Where the hell is the West Palm Beach train station? Well, let's see. We're not even in West Palm Beach anymore. We're like halfway from there down to Pokrovsk. So where in the world does Amtrak stop in West Palm Beach? Because if
they're probably going down to Boca Raton.
No. Because it says right there on that map, man. Like, if I can zoom in on that, which I think I can, actually, yeah. Yeah, I can zoom in on that. See, right over there, West Palm Beach, Delray, Deerfield, Fort Lauderdale, Hollywood, and Miami. So they stopped there, according to their most recent service map. So it's like, what's going on with that, huh?
I don't know, but I wouldn't want Amtrak anyway. Like, they can stay the hell out of all these places. I don't like it.
Dude, you don't even know what you're talking about. Have you seen, like, the Miami trains? Like, the ones that they run for, like, their commuter service? Like, they're actually pretty cool.
Yeah, I've seen them. The Bright Line's the only train I've seen so far that I'm really impressed with. There's the Bright Line again. Like a European-style train.
Look at that, man. So European, so modern, so chic. And we're going to sanction them 20%. They look too European. Like, we got to make it smell like a doctor's office. It cannot be anything but a doctor's office. Let's see. Dang, man, I'm trying to see.
These Bright Line stations are just out of this world modern. Like, those are actually impressive.
Man, they are pretty impressive. I know I can find you the little commuter train. There we go. The Tri-Rail service with a little Palm Beach covered sky painted bi-level cars. Like, it's an interesting kind of. Wait, what kind of a train is this? That looks to be an F-59. That's interesting. Oh, that's kind of normal though. But man, I wish we could see inside of those cars because they don't have any pictures yet that I can see. Oh, wait a minute. There's the inside of one of those cars.
Wait, it looks like the inside of the monorail at the Walt Disney World or something.
Kind of does, actually. Like, it looks very similar. Not as nice as Brightline, but Brightline's in it for the business. Like, this is more so of, like, a public service thing provided by the city. But honestly, though, it's like, shouldn't that be an argument that it should be better? It's like, your like, municipal tax dollars are going into paying for this thing. So it's like, shouldn't it be, like, really nice? Like, that's my opinion on it. Also, nice, F40, I think. There's like a million different things that looked like an F40. That might be one, might not. Someone's about to come and be like, no, and they'll be right. They'll be right. I know it. But still, pretty cool. Oh, look at that. They got that little, dude, those things at Dallas, though, would freaking knock your teeth out going into a turn, man. Like, they'd fling you into the wall and bust your teeth out. You remember that? You remember that, man?
Yeah, they were fast. They would swing around corners and stuff, and they didn't have anywhere for you to really hold on except for like 2 poles in the whole thing. So if you weren't holding on, you were getting slung.
Let me see if I can show you all that, because these things were insane. Like, they would get, here we go. That little bastard thing right there. That thing would, like, intentionally try and knock your teeth out in there. There's nowhere to hang on to, like Matthew's saying, and those turns are sharp, and it's going like 40 the whole time, and you're just standing, going 40. So when that thing took a turn, you were almost flinging your head into the wall, like everyone was. It was honestly physically exhausting to get in that thing and even just stand in it for a while because of how much physical effort you were making into just trying to stay upright and not falling onto the floor. I didn't like them, honestly. Like, I was just like, this is too much. Like, it should be a lot more comfortable. Like, they should have made it to where it could, like, kind of, like, lean into the turns so that you weren't getting physically flung around everywhere.
Yeah, they should have, or something like that. Although I really didn't mind it, though, because that was a huge airport, and I just wanted to get to where we were going and, like, find it. Like, I didn't really care. Like, sling me all you want, just get me there.
I mean, I suppose, but, you know, I have higher standards for trains. I feel like they
Honestly,
should
I would actually speed it up if I was in charge of it. Like, I would say, triple the speed, like, hit it.
Man, put some nitrous in that thing, like, to get the thing rolling.
I want to have that thing going so fast. There's no need to hold on. The centrifugal force literally forces you against the window, and you don't have to worry about nothing. You're just good to go.
You know what? I can't disagree with that too much. Also, how many active runways do they have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Dang, 6. I think Atlanta has like 8, don't they? Like they have a load. Let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Dude, I always swore that they said that Atlanta had like 8 runways. It only has 5.
Yeah, but between Atlanta or Dallas airport, there's no comparison. Like the Atlanta airport just sucks compared to the other ones.
Dude, Atlanta airport, you actually almost get in there and get into like a little rust about every time you get in there. There's always like some worker that's just ready to start fighting whoever asks them a question.
We aren't the only ones that's happened to, by the way. I saw a video yesterday on one of those short videos here on YouTube. It was some fight that broke out between like a whole bunch of people. It was like a huge brawl. I was like, damn, man, they got like 20 or 30 people brawling like in this big fight. And everybody's just standing around looking like, huh, this is interesting.
Man, you go up to a worker in that airport, man, you'll be like, excuse me, do you know where gate B19 is? I'm trying to catch my flight. Bitch, the only thing you're gonna be catching is these hands. And then they like start fighting you. It's like, it's such a tough airport. Like, honestly, like, in my opinion, I'd rather go to any airport but Atlanta International Airport. It truly is like that. It's just so bad. But anyways, with that, I hope we addressed that well. But it is time for us to get on into some more questions. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and our next super chat goes to Adam McLean, another channel legend, and thank you very much, Adam, for that $20 support and also helping to keep the channel running, and we do appreciate that. And Adam says, I just really appreciate this channel's take on the U.S. global strategy and international policy, and I also love watching Russians, get hit by them drones. He can't help himself. He said in the super chat, he really can't help himself.
He can't help himself. He can't help himself. And I thank you so much for the support, and I thank you for enjoying our stance on pro-American and pro-Western interests, because we try and push forward what we believe would be beneficial. Not trying to look at any domestic political lines or trying to fit into one of those molds, but really looking out for what we think would be the best for the United States of America, as I just completely severed my hand from my body right there from slamming it into my table. But beyond that, I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running, and we wouldn't be able to make it possible. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And I get it. You can't help it. You can't help it. But me personally, we joke about it and stuff because we try and keep high spirits. I do feel sorry for some of the people though who are like, I love Russia. I love fighting for them. It's like, well, what happens happens. But for some of them, I feel a little sorry for them. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here goes to Rick Gullinchin, who puts in a 20 Canadian. And thank you very much once again, Rick, for that support. Just like last night, we appreciate it once more. And thank you for helping to keep the channel running. And we also had a 15 from Krusty Hen 0, who put in that 15. And thank you, Krusty Hen, as well for that support. And also helping to keep the channel running. But Enforcer, what say you?
And thank you so much to the Baltiches for helping this channel to keep on running. It is folks like y'all who help to make this thing possible and keep it a reality. And we got to thank you both, Rick and also Krusty Hen, for supporting this channel and keeping it running. And I got to tell you, that's one Krusty Hen right there. But still, thank you once again. I hope that does address that well to the Baltiches. And with that, it is time for us to move on into the next one. But a big thanks to both of y'all, greatly
Indeed. And also, we just had a bot come in here. They said propaganda. I'm taking a propaganda at your message right there, and it ain't looking kosher. So I'm sorry, it's got to go. But anyways, jumping in to our next one here. This one goes to Danny B, who just threw in a $30 super chat. And thank you very much, Chef Danny B, for that support. He said, good evening, enforcers. Chef Danny here. And one question. Do we have a scheduled response from Russia on the ceasefire?
Not yet, Danny B. We do not know when the Russians are going to be presented the ceasefire proposal or when they are going to give their response. So at the moment, all of this is kind of just being done on the seam of the pants right now, and we're really just going to have to take it as it goes. So it might be tomorrow, it might be a couple of days from now, or it might be tonight. We're not entirely sure. But I do thank you so much for the support once again, Danny B, and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to have a chef of the LSA, first and foremost, and secondly, we wouldn't be able to have you here watching this stream right now. And I gotta tell you this, it's one hell of a night. It's one hell of a night. We have had a massive viewership tonight. There were 9.6 thousand people here at the peak, and I gotta say that we peaked. We peaked. We truly have tonight, and we've had about 50,000 people here so far over the length of the entire stream. Really crazy to think that. And I gotta thank all of y'all for being here so far, and I gotta thank you, Danny B, for being one of those people. One of those numbers that is on our screen right now is you, and we thank you, all of you, for being here. And I thank you as well, Danny B, and I hope that you've been having a great day today, and I hope the stream's been doing fairly well on top of that. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Steven Spada, who puts in a 10. And thank you as well, Steven, for that support. We appreciate it very much. And he said, isn't Zelensky's approval rating somewhere in the upper 50 to 60% range? And yeah, it actually is, according to what I've seen. And also, this entire spat between Ukraine and the U.S. has actually raised Zelensky's approval rating even higher than it was previously. So apparently the Ukrainians viewed that whole situation on Zelensky's behalf as being handled, I guess, as best as possible. And it made people either feel sorry for Zelensky that he was getting treated like that, or something, but the people actually approved of him even higher after that event. So very interesting. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, yes, that is true. His approval rating is pretty high. Matthew pretty much got everything dead on the nail right there. Approval ratings are interesting because approval ratings really weren't done until they were done in the United States. I believe during the 1950s and 60s by some of the major news companies at the time, like CBS and NBC, that were trying to poll their viewers on what they were thinking about certain topics or their general opinion of the president at that time. So, interestingly enough, for most of America's history, really for most of democratic nations' histories up to that point, there was really no way for anyone to actually look at any kind of empirical data to figure out whether people were liking their actions or not. They just had to make the actions and then hope that the next election cycle came around and they did fairly okay for their party. So there's a very interesting that changed really just not that long ago. But from what we hear, his approval rating is pretty decent. And I think if we look at the approval ratings, let's see, approval ratings of U.S. presidents. Let me go see if I can get this. Let's see, Gallup. Let's see, United States presidential approval rating. So so this is the Gallup poll approval high and lows for the presidents since 1937. Very interesting actually, because really not a lot of U.S. presidents are doing that well. Like when you look at this. Crazily enough, the highest approval rating that we have in the 21st century is George Bush at 90%. That's actually kind of wild. It appears that it lasted it was sometime, well, it was the poll made in 2001. So this would have been right after 9/11. This was about a week or so after 9/11. His approval rating was at 90%. But approval ratings haven't really been that high for the past two presidents. Interestingly enough, the highest approval ratings that they've ever both had would actually be comparable to the approval rating that Zelenskyy has right now. And that's not even the highest approval rating that he's had over the course of the conflict. So a little bit interesting there with that. But also, the lowest approval ratings, man, geez Louise, man, they were getting low. Like, for all, like, dude, honestly, dude, look at that. Look at that.
Yeah, I know why his was the lowest.
Yeah,
it was during them wars and recessions and stuff.
Well, it looks like all of these polls that were made were in 2008, towards the latter end of the year, in October and November. So that would have been right when the recession happened. So Man, he got
Ah,
slaughtered in the polls for that, like in the polling. But let's see here. Who else? Dude, George. Oh, so this is Daddy Bush. Daddy Bush almost had the same approval ratings as his kid did when he was in office.
yeah, that's wild. If you look at the ones with the highest or the highest lowest ranking, if that makes sense. Let's see here. 44. Yeah, interesting. Let's see here. 42. Let's see. Interesting. So Ford had a 37 at the lowest. It looks like between them all, like Bush apparently had one of the highest approval ratings at one point, but he also had the lowest too. So he was all over the map.
Let's see.
The most stable one it looks like was maybe Ford actually, Ford or Johnson. Honestly, look at Franklin Roosevelt though. He had the lowest of 48, and dang, Kennedy had the lowest of 56. Although he didn't have a lot of time in there, but he had a pretty high low rating.
Oh, Franklin Roosevelt's approval rating that was at 48% was in 1939. So before World War II, and this was during the time that he was doing the public works programs and all that. But it is kind of interesting, man, that his approval rating was only 48%. And I believe the 1940 presidential election, which I think was the time that he ran for his third term, he ended up sweeping the country for the large part in the electoral college. Now, I will say this, folks, because this is within our no politics rule. Franklin Delano Roosevelt actually rigged all of the elections for the large part after the first one or two. And a lot of people didn't. That's why, largely to explain this for everyone, that's why after he died, they then made it a constitutional amendment that a president could only serve 2 terms. Ever. Like, it could be consecutive or they could be separate terms, but only 2 was because of him. And there was a load of stuff that went into the history of this afterwards, like the Battle of Athens, Georgia. If I remember correctly, that was when the local sheriffs were quite truly rigging the elections and such things. But that's why they went to, instead of you could run for a unlimited amount of terms, they only did 2 because that was the tradition. Then they made it the actual statute, constitutional law, that you can only serve 2 terms. So a little bit
Also, go back to that approval rating chart, by the way. I'm curious to see something. Scroll all the way down to the bottom of it. Let's see, there it is right here. So let's see. So the approval rating, let's see, when does it end? Because having an 83% approval rating, that's crazy. Like, that's wild. So scroll up very slowly, and let's see when this era of high approval ratings came to an end, if it ever did.
Really just with the last 2.
Yep. I was wondering that too. I was like, and honestly, like, I'm not going to get political here, but it's getting to the point where it's like the polarization is picking up these days, and I think that's indicated right there with the approval rating, the highest one being almost at 50%, which is pretty much party lines. 50-50, half the country one party, half the country the other party. To see an approval rating at anything higher than like 60%, that's extremely good, like for any candidate or any president.
But also look at this. Their disapproval ratings only get down into the 30s. Like, before that, disapproval ratings easily got down into the 20s.
That's because they probably held them more accountable back in the day. So people were more willing to speak up and disapprove of the president because they weren't so focused on being, one polarization or the other. They were more focused on that they're not doing a good job or not.
Yeah, that's it. That's actually really wild to see, because their approval ratings, generally their highest levels for some is what would be considered their lowest levels, like JFK. JFK's lowest approval rating, which is right before he got shot in Dallas, was as high as the last president's highest approval rating, and that was JFK's lowest. That's actually wild when you look at that. But it really is showing the kind of like environment and the landscape that's now being formed in America, because even Bush and Obama didn't get the kind of deference, I guess you could say, or steadfastness to just hating them or loving them that the 2 prior presidents got. People either loved them unanimously or largely disliked them. And it's a little bit wild to see that could just change from year to year. But then when you look at the present day, it really doesn't change too much at all. Like, you're fighting for slimmer margins.
Yeah, that's true. Also, I just noticed, by the way, because I don't know really how their polling works. I don't know who's doing it, but it looks like a very few polls were run for Ford, who had a very pretty good approval rating. It was only 14 or something. So maybe that might contributed to why his approval was high, because he didn't run polls during certain points, maybe.
I said, slow the polling down.
So, slow it down, cut it back. It's too efficient. Back off.
I said, when you're going to poll the people, you're going to find more cases of people disapproving. So I said to my people, slow the polling down. Polling is a double-edged sword. They poll and they poll. People don't know what's going on. They got polls. We got polls.
It's amazing. It's all computer.
What do you mean?
Like, that's the new quote. You haven't heard that? It's like that's going to go in like the Ripley's Believe It or Not book. Well, let's see. Wow, look at this. It's all computer. Tesla.
It's all cyberware, cyberspace. I like to get my cyberware from Tupperware. They're great at making Tupperware. But anyways, with
Have you seen this Tesla? This is a nice Tesla, that Elon.
I'm going to buy a Tesla because Tesla is a great man. Gets screwed over by Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison, a real jackass, stole his work, electrocuted an elephant just to prove that alternating current was bad. Really bad guy. But a lot of people remember him favorably. The whole Menlo Park thing, all that. I personally don't like him. I actually do like Tesla a little bit better as far as the people go, not the company. But beyond that, I gotta tell you that Thomas Edison, real slimy little snake guy, not a great guy, terrible guy. That really is bad is that Rosie O'Donnell driving down the interstate in that 18-wheeler, Thomas Edison running around Menlo Park, not even sleeping because he's too busy stealing inventions. Really bad guy. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one. So what do we got, Matthew? What have we got?
All right, so our next one here goes to Rye Guy SR, who puts in a 10. And thank you, Rye Guy, for that support, and we appreciate that very much. And they said, keep up the great work, guys. Another great stream. Thank you for that, by the way. They said, God bless the USA, love Ukraine, LSA, and goodbye, LSA, until we meet tomorrow.
Hey, and long live the Lee Spring Army. And I got to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I got to thank you so much, Rye Guy Sr., for supporting this channel and helping you to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep up the good work, and we wouldn't be able to keep this thing rolling. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you once again for support and making this thing possible. And also, I see some people asking some questions, and I'll address them really quickly. I saw some echo back, a genuine question. Has the idea of peace in Ukraine given you guys a desire to pivot into political commentary? Before you made a bigger point to avoid political discourse. Look, we are largely remaining within the no politics rule. I'm not really showing any deference to one side or the other. We're governing it neutrally. And I don't really think looking at the polls of prior presidents and current ones is a really bad thing. I mean, to be entirely honest with you, I mean, like, did you hear me say that I liked one over the other? No. So, what kind of commentary would that be if I'm not even giving an opinion on it? That's not really commentary. That's just more so looking at the polls and finding them interesting, really more so. I see some people don't really get that. And I'll try and explain this a little bit more seriously here. Some people don't get that. I'll be honest. I'll tell you my thinking process here. We have tried as hard as we can to not cover anything political at all, or even mention the names of people ever, in a effort to stay as militantly neutral as possible. And to be entirely honest with y'all, we've really only gotten shit on for doing that for 3 years. Not to say that we're going to stop being politically neutral because of it, but it's made me understand we're going to get shit on no matter what. So might as well lax it up a little bit, where we can at least look at some things that may be considered slightly political, still not giving an opinion or a take on anything political, at least domestically. But nevertheless, we're going to get crapped on your way. Because if I sit there and say something like this is what's stupid, like, just to be entirely honest, I could say something like, man, there's a decent amount of corruption with people, doing insider trading and stuff, which is being very non-political because it's a two-side sort of a statement. And then people want to go, oh, you sick bastard, and then say that we're like a Republican or a Democrat or something. And so, it's like, it doesn't even matter, because if we look at it a little bit and we still make no comment on it, people are going to be unhappy. And then if we make no comment on it and we don't even bring it up at all, people are going to be unhappy. So, it is what it is at this point. So I'm not really going to go out of my way to just hide from it a whole lot. I'm not going to give any opinions on domestic political topics or my opinions of current sitting presidents. But like we always have, as far as foreign policy is concerned, we will say whether an action is a good action or not, if it's in support of American or Western interest in some sort of a larger scheme. But beyond that, we will stay completely out of domestic political affairs and saying whether they're good or not. So I hope that gives you all a little bit of an understanding for some folks, because like I got to be honest as well. Like, people have got to have a little bit more emotional maturity, because like people go off on us, like, and I'm not saying this for everyone, but for a small group of people. Like, people have got to have a little bit more emotional maturity, because like, we don't cover politics at all or anything. Like, if seeing the name Biden or Trump can get you feral, like, you might need to check yourself and have a little bit of emotional maturity, because at the end of the day, we really can't avoid their names. Like, they are the presidents of the United States, and I still go as neutrally as I can by calling them the president of the United States and not by their names, so that we once again don't show any deference for either of them. But at the same time, if that is enough to trigger someone to where they're going feral because they don't like Biden or they don't like Trump, I really cannot go out of my way to avoid politics that militantly, because those are the people at the end of the day who are making a lot of foreign policy actions decisions. Biden was doing it for pretty much the entire time we were running the show, and now Trump's the one who has the wheel in the White House. So, if we sit there and, get to the point that we act like we can't even act like the U.S. government exists because someone might go feral for hearing a name, then we've kind of tied our own hands behind our back, especially on foreign policy analysis. So I hope that it kind of addresses that somewhat well. But once again, like the no politics rule doesn't mean that you can't say something like, I think the foreign policy decisions are not that great, or I think that they're great and I think that they'll work out well. Like, the no politics rule doesn't stop you from saying that. The no politics rule is for people who foam at the mouth. So people who come in and they're like, oh, I hate Biden and the liberals, or I hate Trump and the MAGA people. Like, that's what the no politics rule is for, is to stop those people from coming in and just causing a riot. Like, that's what the rule is for. And so we have to figure out and analyze and interpret who is breaking those rules and who isn't. We generally do not allow violent or incredibly hostile sounding rhetoric from either political side to be allowed here on the channel, because it's not really analytical. It's more so just being emotionally charged and illogical for the large part. And people do enjoy that kind of thing, and it's very mainstream and popular these days. But at the end of it all here on this channel, that isn't really where that belongs. That belongs elsewhere. Like, that belongs on, like, any political show you can think of. I could think of plenty. CNN, Fox.
Excuse me. They welcome you with open arms. I'm a facts, logic. I'm anger, a little bit rage baiting. You know what I mean? Like, rage baiting.
Yeah, Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, who's that guy on the other side, man? I'm trying to think of his Nick Fuentes, I think that's his name, something like that. Those
I don't even know what side the hell he's on. Like, I don't even know what the hell that dude says. That dude's like in the same camp in my mind as that other crazy dude, whatever his name is. What's the other guy? The really controversial one that just visited Hamas or something the other day.
I don't know.
What's his name? There's Nick Fuentes. There's that crazy dude, and then there's what's that guy's name? Y'all know who I'm talking about.
Remember him.
He's not memorable, but yet he's also obnoxious. So you know who he is, but you don't know his name. What the hell is the guy's name? I see his face. Dang, like I feel like a senior moment right here. Like, I need to know the name because I need to know I'm not getting dementia. Let's see. Damn, I
can't remember it. I give up. I can't even remember it. But those are the kind of shows for folks like that. This is
Jackson Hinkle. There it is.
Yeah, Jackson Hinkle. That guy.
Hinkle.
Yeah,
that dude's a lunatic, like another lunatic.
Yeah, like, those are the shows for people who are extremely political and also, like, emotionally unstable. Like, just to put it that way, like, if that offends you, I'm sorry, but that really isn't across the board kind of a thing. If you're that emotionally unstable that you can't even hear about the actions of a president being good or bad, depending on your bias, you might want to go more towards their shows, because I just don't do that, and I'm never going to do that. Like, an action's good or it's bad. It doesn't really matter if you like that person or dislike them. We try and be fair here. So with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. Also, Old Scale said, Keemstar, you're not going to believe it. Keemstar actually watches the show, and he likes it. So, like, that's an interesting thing. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well with the whole political side of things and how the no politics rule works, and also that there's been a little bit of a relaxing of it, at least on our end, for commentary purposes, because it doesn't really matter if we're incredibly militant about it or a little bit lax on it. We're still going to get crapped on, so I'd rather be a little bit more lax about it, at least on, is saying that the office of the president does exist and that there is a president there right now from one side or the other. A little bit more lax on that, but we're still not going to be getting into domestic political commentary and saying things like, oh, I think that everyone deserves a machine gun, or I think that everyone have their guns taken away from them. We're never going to be doing anything like that. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat here goes to Danny B. Once again, this time he puts in another 20, and thank you very much, Danny, for the second support of the night. And of course, we appreciate that very much. He said, Chef Danny again, and I'm always listening, but I got busy earlier, and I didn't hear if you mentioned anything about Iran and LSA.
And thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And as a matter of fact, I just realized that I actually skipped over the entire Middle Eastern news segment, but it was very short. The United States is sanctioning Iran, and they are continuing to say that there's going to be severe consequences, and we now know that the Syrian civil war is on in full again. This is the current map of Syria, and I'll be entirely honest with you all, it looks almost no different than the one from the first Syrian civil war before it ended last year in Assad's defeat. So it is the same thing, crazily enough. So I think that we're probably going to be watching the Middle East will continue to go into instability for some time. But I hope that does address that well, Danny B. Actually, I didn't address it, but it was a very, very short kind of a thing. But still, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Peter Florence, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Peter, for that $5 support as well. He said, smack that like button and LSA.
Hey, and smack that like button, baby! We've gotten up to 2,800 likes so far tonight, which is a pretty significant amount. And I hope that we continue to climb even higher. And so with that, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so with that, I thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And also, really quickly, one more thing, because I see some people still talking about the politics thing. Also, another thing, another way that the no politics rule has been laxed is that when I do voices of political people, because honestly, like, I'm just not going to lie, it's funny to me. Like, I find it really funny. I just do a caricature of them at this point, so sometimes I'll bring up real things that they're saying, like talking about, cutting down trees. Like, like we'll sit there, we are going to strip the entire country of trees. Like that's like a little bit of a way it's like, not to like make it sound like we hate or like the policy actions that are being made, but it's pretty funny. Like, I think that either way, of either political affiliation that you have, I think that those are pretty funny. Like, if you don't find them funny, you might be a little bit soft, but I think it's incredibly funny. Like I get a kick out of it, because I'm just gonna be honest. The current president, when you don't really look at the policy side of things and you just listen to them, like, it's almost like it's a comedy. Like, it's just how it comes off every single time. Like, I heard that you could inject bleach. It's like, how in the world would come up with something like that? Like, it's just hilarious to talk about and make fun of. So, like, not to say I like him or dislike him. All I can say is that there's a decent amount of comedy material there for us to work with. And look, Jack, the other guy, there was some to work with, but like, not really as much. Like, to be entirely, he was kind of a little boring. But the other, like, well, honestly, yeah, like, he just rambled. Someone said it. He just kind of rambled, which was funny in its own right. And you could do like the rambling. Matthew could do the rambling really good. Like, he did the Greenland is a frozen island.
Man, what you trying to say? I did the rambling good. What's that mean?
Dude, you knew how to do it. Like you did it well when you would do that voice. You'd be like, oh, look,
I can still do it, Jack. I can still, whip it out from time to time. I mean, come on, man. I mean, I'm in the Himalayas, Appalachia. No, not Appalachia. It's Ohio. No, wait a minute. Anyway.
I got yachts in Ohio. Like, yachts
in Ohio, fat asses in Ohio.
Also, by the way, I just got to say this. He just disappeared. Like, he's not even around anymore. I don't even know what he's doing. Like, I would love to make jokes about him, but he left the White House, and I've never heard of him again.
This place, I got a card in the mail. It said, Shady Oaks. I said, whoa, Jack, I think I might go there. The alternative is Xi Jinping. I'm going to the Oaks.
I went to the Himalayas, and
look, while I was there, I went to Tibet and I had my foot rubbed.
And then I went and I went to the stock market. There's something. But beyond that, I hope that kind of like tells you all a little bit about the joke side of things. Because once again, it's not supposed to be offending anyone or showing a clear political bias, but they are funny, and I thought that people would enjoy a good laugh, because
You know what's funny, real quick, about presidents, and this is once again not political. Let me give the disclaimer so that way we don't have anybody getting riled up. But after a president leaves office, it becomes very apparent how much power they actually had as the president, like amongst their political circles after they leave. Like for example, Bill Clinton. You can see him wandering the streets occasionally from time to time. He'll be going to like local stores in his town and stuff like that. And most people will bump right into Clinton, who's a former president, and they'll have no clue who he is. And they'll just bump right into him. And he's gotten really old now. So he just, stumbles around and he looks like just, anybody else just wandering around town. But it's wild. Like some presidents leave office and they have a lot of influence over their party. And then some presidents leave and then they have no influence. It's like they disappear into the abyss. Which is interesting. I really don't know what happened to the last guy. Like, if he's still around doing stuff, I'm not seeing it. And I follow that stuff pretty closely, so I don't know where he went.
Dude,
but some of them leave and have a whole bunch of like speaking arrangements, all kinds of gigs that they show up to. But just not all the time.
Like one guy, man, who surprisingly had a lot of pull. Really for like the rest of his life, even after he stopped being president, and really honestly for the time period in disgrace, was Nixon. Because he was like a national security advisor to every single president after him until he died in the 90s. It's like, that is wild, man. Like, that's really weird. Like, that he had that kind of influence even after the whole Watergate thing, and being dragged through the mud publicly. And he still had a decent amount of influence. It's kind of interesting with that because I'll be honest with y'all, you would think that Clinton would have a decent amount of pull, like just being entirely honest, because most people remember him somewhat favorably, beyond the whole Monica Lewinsky thing. Most people view him somewhat favorably, and they're like, oh, he was really charismatic. And a lot of people who ran into him always said that he was a very charismatic guy. And really not many people have incredibly bad things to say about him. Some people didn't like him, but they didn't hate him either. And then he just kind of, ended up being a nothing burger after he stopped being the president. It's interesting with that. There's a decent amount of people who are like that, man, when you think about it. Like Gerald R. Ford, he just kind of disappeared. I don't even think I knew what he did after being president. I don't even think he was involved in government anymore.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. Also, like I want to make this comment, and I'm always debating whether or not I should mention it because the person is of recent. But I'm going to make it as neutral as possible. I'm not saying whether or not I like the person or not. Just an observation. Obama, when he left office, whether or not you thought he was a good president or not, when he left office, it became very apparent that he still had a lot of political pull with his party. Like that was very obvious. He still has that pull, by the way. And that's something very interesting. Not too many presidents that leave office have that kind of pull over a political party, because at that point, they really have nothing to provide to the party outside of simply basically being a figurehead or a speaker on behalf of the party. They really have nothing tangible to provide because they're not holding office anymore. And once again, they're just basically there as a figurehead. So it's fascinating how he held so much power after leaving office in a political type of sense, like gatekeeping the whole party domain, which is kind of fascinating.
Yeah. Also, someone just asked, was Jimmy Carter still influential in his party after he left the presidency? No, not really. He was a one-term president, and he seemed wildly unpopular even with his own party at the time, and even afterwards. A lot of people remember him very fondly, though, because while he wasn't a great president, and generally everyone agrees on that, he was a very nice person. I mean, like, he was a very, very good person, had a great soul and stuff. So a lot of people remember him well for that, but not really for his abilities to command his party or really be in the office of the president, unfortunately, for him, because he was a very nice guy, but that may have actually been a bit of a detriment for him while being the president. But anyways, with that, now that we've gone through this very clinical discussion of presidents and different kinds of things with that, and keeping it as neutral as possible, we hope you all enjoyed it a little bit because it's something we don't really talk about too much. It is time for us to move on. And also Ken Larson put it well, great dude, bad president. Sometimes great dudes make bad presidents, like Ulysses S. Grant. Like many of y'all will know him as a hero of the Civil War, especially if you're from America. He was the Union's greatest general by most accounts, and he ended up being a terrible president. I mean, there's a great deal of scandals under his administration, and he was just taken advantage of. He was a very gullible guy. He really believed people's intentions up front, and so he would just allow people into his cabinet that would just rob the government blind sometimes, and that's very unfortunate for him too. And he got taken advantage of in his personal life too. Ended up practically broke. Did you know that, Matthew? Ulysses S. Grant was almost broke when he died.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was almost broke, and he got throat cancer, and it was bad. Like, it was very bad. And so in his final days, really his final year, he wrote his own autobiography. It was pretty much his memoirs, and then he finished it, I think, a week or two before he died, and his final words was asking someone who was at his house for water. He said, water, and then they went to go get him a pitcher of water and bring it back because his throat was hurting so bad from the throat cancer, and when they came back, he had passed, and died. But his memoir sold incredibly well after he died. And he was able to ensure through the sales of that memoir that his family was financially secure for some time. But he was a great guy. Like, a lot of people always said he was a great guy, but not a great president. So, very interesting with that. But anyways,
Also, by the way, I see a live chat question before we jump into our next super chat. Anthony Manzano said, are most authoritarian leaders this delusional like Putin in terms of the demands that he's asking for, like an unconditional surrender from their opponent? It depends. It depends, honestly. Most times I would say yeah, but not all the time. Mainly authoritarian leaders. Authoritarian leaders usually are not as delusional as they seem, but they put on the image that they're delusional, or to us they seem delusional, but in their heads they're simply being hard-lined and basically very hard-nosed about the whole situation to appear like a strong man, because their whole image is about being a strong man. So if they don't go into something demanding everything they want and they try to get everything they want, then they go in looking weak, and that starts degrading that strong man authoritarian image, which they've worked so hard to build up. So honestly, I would say this. In Putin's head, he knows when he's close to a cliff. Like, he knows that. He's not stupid. He's evil, but he's not stupid. And he also knows when he goes too far. And at some point, he weighs the risk. Am I going to look too weak, and are the people going to rise up against me? Or am I going to go too far with the West, and they end up doing something so bad to Russia that they end up crushing my country? They do that analysis in their head. They're not so delusional that they're not thinking about that. But publicly, it doesn't appear like it. But they keep that very private. They don't say it out in the public. But Enforcer, what say you?
Pretty much the same thing. All of the actions that Putin makes look asinine and stupid from our end because we have a realistic view of the situation. But he is trying to make sure in his dog-headed way to pursue a specific kind of a goal and the specific path to get there. So while it doesn't look logical to us, there is a method to the madness to it. It's just that usually when you get really hard-lined like that, it doesn't work out well. It usually works out detrimentally. You can see that in plenty of examples. Like, to be entirely honest, there is an example right now that's where the current president is pretty dog-headed with the whole tariff side of things, and it's starting to really affect the U.S. economy internally. Once again, looking at the Dow Jones, just to get a little bit of a concept of that, it has not been doing well. This is year to date. It's at the lowest level it's ever been in the entire year. The lowest point before this was 41.9, almost 42,000 points. Now it's down to 41.35. So many people can tell it's clearly not doing well. It's dropping off, and it's losing trillions of dollars in value over just the past week. And the kind of dog-headed approach that we've had to the whole tariff situation is the exact reason why the stock market's beginning to plunge like that. There is but not to say that it's just absolutely stupid and nonsensical. The president of the United States actually has this clear plan or agenda with pursuing this kind of a dog-headed approach. It's just that dog-headed approaches usually turn out very impractical in their actual execution and end up producing poor results. There is a way, like just to say this for everyone, because I don't want to make it sound like I'm supporting the president's agenda. Really, any president's agenda is achievable through certain measured means. Like, for example, right now with Trump's tariffs or Obama's Medicare, there are actionable means to be able to make a good scenario out of really any kind of agenda that you're looking for. It's just that you have to be able to make sure to either be aggressive enough when you need to be or be passive enough when necessary. You really can't be extremely passive or extremely aggressive in the entirety of the execution of the plan, or else you're going to start overstepping or understepping many opportunities and screwing up the whole plan and what the actual outcome is. So that's kind of what we're seeing right now. Talking about it on a very clinical level of actually executing a plan, it's being done far too aggressively. He probably could have achieved, speaking about the current tariffs situation right now, he probably could have achieved his actual aims if he tariffed one group at a time. So he started tariffing the Canadians, then they relented and ceded into his demands because the U.S. economy wouldn't be affected too badly. It would be affected somewhat badly, but not too badly. And then he could move on to Mexico and then the EU, and he could have contained any kind of fallout or damage to be in one economic partnership instead of all of them. Instead, the tariffs were rolled out pretty much against everyone simultaneously. So now instead of the United States having some sort of economic leverage or power over its trade war adversaries, it doesn't, because all of these trade adversaries at this point have economic superiority because they make up most of, I think it's around 60 to 70% of all of the imports coming into the United States. So as far as the execution of that plan, it was far too aggressive, and it will most likely be doomed to failure because of that. It may have actually been a successful plan if he had been more reserved in its execution and tried to isolate each country individually and then move through the process that way. Not to say that it's a good idea. I personally don't think that tariffs are a great idea at all, even if he was to isolate them one at a time. But he still could have made it a much more successful execution of his plan. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, a piece of news which I don't think we covered tonight in the live stream. I covered it in the video, but I don't recall us covering it in this live stream. We did have some more news, by the way, about that ship collision that occurred right off the coast of England. The cargo ship, which is the one that allegedly rammed into the U.S. military oil tanker that was being contracted by the U.S. military that was carrying some jet fuel on board. Apparently, from what I've heard, and I hopefully have the story right, the cargo ship rammed the oil tanker, the U.S. military one, and they rammed it, and the oil tanker was anchored, apparently, according to what I heard. And the captain of the cargo ship was a Russian national, we're told by the reports, and I believe he's been arrested in connection to that crash. I can't remember exactly what the charges were. What are the charges, good sir? I don't remember what the charges were, but it was apparently in connection to the crash, and with him being a Russian national, this whole situation looks a whole lot more fishy than it looked like originally. But Enforcer, what say you?
Yes, that is actually some news that we didn't cover. The captain was Russian, most of the crew was Russian, the vessel was Portuguese flagged, and now it's being assumed that this Russian national may have been operating on behalf of the Russian government. We're not entirely sure about that, though, and there's an investigation underway at this point, because it may have just been a maritime accident, and it was just coincidence the guy was a Russian national, or it may have been a deliberate action. But with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion, from what I heard. And the charges were definitely not eating a succulent Chinese meal. It was manslaughter. It was manslaughter.
He may have been eating a succulent Chinese meal after the boat rammed into the other one, but he's not eating a succulent meal now. I can promise you that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man, I'm telling you, I get no respect around here. Oh, man, I run into a ship. I don't even get to finish my meal. Oh, man, they arrest me. Oh, man, terrible.
But with that,
also, people were saying manslaughter. So if it's manslaughter, if that is the charge, then they assume he was negligent, I'm guessing, meaning he wasn't like properly piloting the ship. If that's the charge, if it's manslaughter, and once again, I don't know whose court this is in. If it's in English court, then it could be different because I'm talking about American law when I say that. But someone said negligence of maintenance. So if it's negligence, that would indicate that he didn't do it on purpose necessarily, but he might have done it, just out of being, absent from the bridge or something like that. And we don't know the exact details, so I'm just speculating there. But very interesting. Somebody said 2 charges, so very fascinating. So that'll be interesting to hear exactly what the actual written charges are. Like, what do they accuse him of? Because I haven't heard the details so far.
Yeah, I haven't really heard a lot of details on that so far as well, so we'll have to wait and see. Also, I saw someone say something that was a little interesting. Someone said economic superiority. Well, it doesn't matter about the GDP size when we're talking about trade. It actually matters about the amount of goods in billions of dollars that is being imported and exported between the two partners. Because interestingly enough, Canada and Mexico, Canada has a GDP of around 2 trillion, and Mexico has a GDP, I believe, around 750 billion, which isn't much. Let me actually go make sure on the Mexican GDP that I'm getting that correct. Mexican GDP. Actually, it's pretty high these days, and it is skyrocketing. It went from 1 trillion in 2020 to it's nearly twice the GDP at 1.8 now. That's actually very impressive for them. But beyond that, the Canadians and the Mexicans have a pretty decent GDP, but it doesn't get close to what the United States has right now at around 27 trillion. And this is according to the 2023 figures. But moving on from that, it actually matters more so about the billions of dollars of goods that they're shipping in. And Canada and Mexico, while being economically minuscule compared to the United States, are the two largest trading partners that the United States has in terms of imports and exports. So with that in mind, there actually is a significant amount of trade power that they have. And if you sanction them both at the same time, you're stopping the easy or quick rapid flow of both routes of goods or both imports of goods, which could equal up to, I think at this point, combined in between the two, nearly $1 trillion in goods that will be increasing about a quarter in cost across the board, which is where it starts to become a big issue. That's $1 trillion worth of goods or raw materials used to produce goods that's now 25% more expensive. And that means that a lot of the production processes or in purchase of those goods is going to be 25% more expensive, which could start to lead some companies to have to start spending a lot more money to get these items to sell or use to produce a good to sell. And that also means that that's not going to be making shareholders happy. Because I know a lot of people are saying, well, a company isn't, working on like a shoestring budget. They're not going to go broke overnight. And that's true. But with how a corporation structure works, a company must always be putting their shareholders at top priority. And shareholders do not like to see decreasing profits, even if it is from something uncontrollable like a tariff. So these companies or these CEOs largely have to start increasing the prices to match the company's profit losses in the tariffs, so that way they're still making sure to appease their shareholders and show that there is some sort of increasing dividends every single year for the shareholders and the board of directors to be happy with. So that could start to cause these companies to have to raise their prices, which means that less customers may be buying those goods, which means that those companies may be seeing less profits in the end because of the price hike, which means that they are going to continue to have to try and then deal with a reduced amount of income, meaning that they'll buy less products, and it starts to see that the economy slows down. It's pretty much putting the brakes on a lot of the economic processes that we see in America right now, and also the economic activity from simply just taking goods and then selling them, and people keeping a constant flow of money in the economy. We can start to see that this thing starts slowing down. And that's really where the issue comes in, is that at one at a time, you could have maybe made this manageable, and the economic fallout wouldn't have been that big. As far as this is going right now, I think the economic fallout could be really significant by the time this is done and over with, and, it won't look good. And, if you don't believe me, once again, you can just go look at the Dow Jones, and it doesn't look like a good story. It's doing as badly as it could right now. So it's not like I'm coming up with this.
You know what's going to be fantastic though is if anybody has a bunch of cash laying around their retirement account. Let's say they saw this dip happening. They're like, I'm going to liquidate my positions and wait and see what happens. And this thing keeps plummeting like this. Around the time of the whirlybird, by the way, when that market crash happened, if you had money on hand to invest when that crash hit rock bottom and you invested, you would be very, very wealthy today because of that humongous gain that occurred because the market corrected after the whirlybird sort of like became known and people became figuring out basically what was going to happen with it. They made a lot of money when the market actually corrected and went back up to normal and got to what it was at today. So there's another big opportunity probably coming by the way. If this thing keeps crashing and keeps going down, eventually it will hit rock bottom, and that'd be a good time to invest. That's just my suggestion, by the way. That's not advice or nothing like that. You do what y'all want to do. I'm just saying that from an opinion.
And so with that, it's probably a good time for us to get on back into some questions. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right. So our next one here goes to Jeremy Vahill, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, Jeremy, for that support. He said, is it true that a French nuclear attack submarine surfaced in Halifax on the 10th, or am I reading the wrong news?
Oh, no, it did surface in Halifax on the 10th. Let me go. Oh, my Lord. I'm forgetting where Halifax is. It's down here. There it is. There it is right here. Yes, it did surface in Halifax. Pretty cool, actually. I like French submarines. I really like the French Navy. The French Navy is just cool. And let me go show this to y'all. The French Navy. And look at their logo. So streamlined, so chic. It's like the bow of a vessel cutting through the waves. That's actually a very modern logo for a navy.
That is modern. It's very modern. I almost can't tell what it's about.
Man, you can't tell what it's about until you think of the breaking of the waves from the bow of a ship, and then you're like, ah, yes, the French. But beyond that, it's not a big navy. It's only got 37,000 personnel as of 2021, and 7,000 civilians also under their employ as well. But it is a very impressive navy technologically. Let me show y'all the Horizon class. What a cool looking ship.
That is pretty cool.
And look at this. This computer rendition.
That's the Patrouilleur Altamir.
I don't even know how to pronounce that. That's why I wasn't even trying to pronounce it. I was like, I don't know, man. But just look at this. Oh, wait, hang on. We can actually find the one that was in. Here we go. It is a Suffren class, which is...
They got a Suffren class. They're on their Suffren.
Man, they said, oh, we make the Russians suffer. It's like we make them suffer greatly. But still, really cool submarines. We can actually find a picture of the Tourville. Well, actually, we can't. There's a rough illustration of it, but it did service in Halifax. But they have the Charles de Gaulle, which is one of the only decent aircraft carriers outside the United States. The Queen Elizabeth class is a pretty decent class, and so is the Charles de Gaulle. But honestly, there really aren't any other aircraft carriers, like full-on, true, genuine aircraft carriers out there, unless you're talking about the Chinese Type 001 and Type 002. And even then, their carrying capacity is fairly limited. Also, they have the LHDs. These are like little Legopi LHDs. These are like extra small, like compared to the American ones, like the Wasp, or I think the Liberty class, a little bit smaller, but still pretty neat. And then they have just loads of major certain service combatants, like the Aquitaine class, clean as hell.
Oh, that's nice right there. That's the butter on the croissant. Look at that.
Man, butter. They also got the Horizon class.
Oh, it looks like a computer rendering it so sharp.
Man, it's so clean. And then they have the Lafayette class of... honestly, these aren't that good looking.
Honestly, to me, as long as they do the job, they're good looking to me.
And then they have the Fleuriol class, which is a bit of an older one. Man, honestly, man, European navies are really advanced looking, like the design of their vessels, the sleekness. And look at the French Navy. Actually, crazily enough, the French Navy, it looks like the oldest service combatant here is from 1996, which cannot be said for the U.S. Navy, because there are ships still in service with the U.S. Navy that have been in service since the 70s in some instances, without even really a major refit. So a fairly modern Navy for a somewhat modern country. And also, we cannot go on without mentioning the Royal Navy of the Netherlands. Well, actually, we'll just put in the Dutch Navy. That ought to find it. The Royal Netherlands Navy. We cannot move on without talking about the Royal Netherlands Navy, because it's just such a cool Navy. It's such an amazing Navy. Let me show y'all. Look at this. The Holland class. That's clean.
I like that. Oh, that color, though. That color is, like, clean as hell. I like that, like, ice white. Oh,
Dude, just striking, man. Visually striking. They have the De Zeven Provinciën class right here.
Oh, that's... Whoa. It's the HMLMS Trump.
Oh!
What the hell? Whoa. It's the best ship that's ever sailed the 7 seas. It's the F-803. It's not a Tesla, but it's a very, very competent. And they call it the Trump.
Some people have said that this ship cannot trump others, but I personally gotta say that they are very wrong. What news organization are you from? Shut up, you're completely pointless. Don't answer the question. Great vessel. We travel around the seas looking for Russians or Ukrainians, really depends on the day. We will threaten all of them, and we will
This ship, the Trump, has the amazing ability to throw it in reverse and whip it around a complete 180 on a dime, and it shocks the world when they do it. It's shocking. I've never seen anything quite like it. It turns on a dime. Nobody saw it coming. It's like a zero-turn lawnmower. Amazing.
Mr. President, I don't think that the ship it has enough firepower. Silence. It is the greatest ship. It is the best ship. It is the finest ship in the Navy. Many people have said, wow, that's a great ship, an incredible ship, and there surely has never been a better ship than this. So many people have always said they've wanted a ship this great. The ratings have never been better. People see this on TV and they go, wow, that's a great ship, an incredible one. But just a beautiful thing, And then they also have these, which are just weird, like the Rotterdam class. Also, by the way, Matty, one of these is called the Enforcer. I'm not even kidding.
It went into the area of the. I saw it on marine map. Damn, I was like losing my thought there for a minute. I was like, I saw it on a marine map. I posted it on Twitter. That's what I was trying to get out.
Man, I saw it on the I was like
malfunction a little bit.
Working, but still, the Dutch Navy is a pretty modern one. I like it. You know, Matthew, a navy that we've never looked at, the Italian Navy. We've never looked at.
Did they even have a navy?
Of course, they have a navy.
That's right. We've looked at them before because I was asking about that Rari boat.
Wait a minute, have we? Dude, there's no way we could have, because I've never seen the symbol of the Italian Navy before until right now.
Let's see.
We don't want the structure.
Let's see here. They have any ships? They got any?
Oh, wow, look at these subs.
Wow, look at that. That's nice. Look at that.
Honestly, man, this just looks like a really a high-end narco sub with the size of the thing. Like, it's a very small sub.
Yeah, why is the side so shiny like that? It looks like it could be a Rari boat. Porsche design boat.
Maybe.
That's German, but you know.
And then they have the Sorrow class, which looks to be a little old.
I'm sorrow for them. That one doesn't look right.
Man, and then they have a couple of LHDs, it appears. They have the Cavour class, which is... Actually, that's really cool looking.
Yeah, not bad.
And then they have the Trieste class, which honestly looks like a thinner Queen Elizabeth with, the two towers, the Twin Towers kind of a construction that they have.
Honestly, Maloney's got a nice military. I like this Navy.
Maloney, what's Maloney?
You know, the leader of Italy.
Oh, I forgot that was her name. But then we got the San Grigio class, which is like that Grigio wine that you get, and not bad. Actually, pretty neat. Let's see here. Oh wow, look at this, dude. That honestly looks just like the French destroyer that they have. It also has the dual main gun armament on the front. And then they have this one. The what's the name of this class? The Durand de la Pen class, which is this.
That's like that pasta class, that La Pen.
Man, we gonna make that penne. It's lit, man. We gonna make that penne with the Panera bread. And then they also have the exact same. Honestly, man, the French and the Italians look like they went in half and half on designing and fielding these vessels, because this is the exact same. These are the exact same vessels that the French are using in their navy.
Yeah, they just believe in having the same ships. They believe in having it a little bit uniform, you know?
What the hell? Dude. Oh my. Like being chilling, like down in the bottom in the subtitles. Dude, this picture was taken by a PLA spy.
Yeah, it says Hunini own work. He put in some effort to get this photo right here, send it right back to the CCP.
Man, dude, look at it, but these are just terrible. These are horrendous. Oh my lord, what a crime. These are better. Like honestly. But geez, man, the Italian Navy is a lot like the French Navy, but in some cases it's worse. Man, rough. Okay, so what is another larger country? You know, we haven't looked at the Spanish Navy. I wonder if it's going to be like a copy-paste of the French and the Italians. Let's take a little gander here. They should have a pretty decent Navy. Not an incredibly good one, but at least an alright one. So, they have the Galerna class. Kind of run-of-the-mill. They have the S-80. That's kind of like a S550. They also have the Juan Carlos I, which is an LHD. I'm not gonna lie,
Damn,
dude.
boy. Juan Carlos is a thick boy.
Man, Juan Carlos has not been laying off the carbs. That is for sure. They also have the Galizia class right here.
That's like the other ship that Italy's got almost.
Yeah, the one that the Dutch have, you know, the big boy. Kiss me, big boy, or whatever the hell that meme was.
The hell? Man, you better get some context to that. Sound wild.
Man, wait, hang on, I gotta tell you. So there was this fat guy getting bullied by this other dude in this meme, and like this guy had like a clown mask on his his hand, and he was making the clown say, "Give me a kiss." And then the guy tried to like leave the room, so then he opened the door with the clown mask on his hand, and then showed the clown mask, and then it said, "Kiss me, fat boy," and then the guy just punched it straight in the face. So that was
there
the
we go.
meme.
That's sufficient context. It's not taken out of context.
Hang on, well, you know what? I don't just go pull up the clip so that way we can make sure to completely avoid anything.
Yeah, we're going to get copyrighted now. We're going to just nuke the whole stream into oblivion.
We got to do it at this point. We got to do it, man. It's the law. So
Don't do it, man. We're going to get copyrighted.
oh, okay. Well, you're gonna have to take my word on it. You're gonna have to take my word on it. Anyways, they have the Alvaro de Bazan class. Not bad.
Okay.
Not bad. Not bad. Honestly, not that impressive, but it's not bad either. Then they have the Santa Maria class, which is just an Oliver Hazard parry. That's it. So
Interesting.
yeah. And then they have the Meteoro class, which looks like Ligopi. And then they have that's it, actually. That was all of their actual service combatants. They have 17 of them. So anyways, it's time for us to move on. It's time for us to move on to the next questions. So what do we have, Matthew? What do we have?
All right, so jumping into our next super chat. This one goes to, guess who? It is Danny B. Once again, he throws in the third super chat of the night. And a big thanks to you, Danny, for that third support of the night. We do appreciate that very much. And Danny says, Chef Danny again. And fine, guys, you have finally talked me into being y'all's personal chef. I give up. Honestly, Danny, I would not be opposed to that whatsoever. I don't know what you're charging, though. I don't know if I can afford a personal chef. But thank you very much for the support and lending a hand as the personal chef. Excuse me, goodness. I'm choking up, right? Getting me choked up. But I must say, if I didn't have to cook the Hello Freshes, I would be very happy, to be honest with you, because I don't mind cooking, but it's not my forte. It distracts me from my work. But I have to eat healthy. Otherwise, I just eat the slop from the fast food places, which is not good on a daily basis. But thank you, Danny. And Enforcer, what say you?
I got to thank you so much for the support, Danny B, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I'd have to say thank you for being brought on as our personal chef. We don't have much in the way of money, actually, to be able to hire a personal chef, but we will accept you as the chef of the LSA. I'm the personal chef to the Enforcers. And so with that, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep running. Hope that does just that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Jack Ray, who puts in a 10. And thank you, Jack, as well, for that $10 support. And he says, have you heard about the 1968, the year of the lost submarines, the USS Scorpion, the French Minerve, and the Israeli INS Dakar, and Soviet K-129?
I have, and I've especially heard of the K-129, because the K-129 was the sub that the Glomar Explorer attempted to rip off of the bottom of the seafloor. There it is. The K-129. That's a little model of it. But they ended up digging up some of it, getting it out of there. And that's why you get the Glomar Explorer answer, which is where you cannot confirm nor deny. But still, I hope that does address that well, at least in our opinion. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running, because I have heard of that year, and it was not a fine year for submariners. I will tell you that. And so with that, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Nightmare Before Christmas, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Nightmare Before Christmas, for that $10 support. And they said, LSA, and take a question from the chat, please. And we shall. And thank you once again for that support. And the live chat question is going to go to Jezza, who says, are we in a Cold War? A new one.
I would say so. Yeah, we're in like the protoplasmic phase of it, or we're in it in the very earliest part. But I would say yes, we are getting into one with the Chinese. China. They are incredibly questionable people. They do all kinds of crazy things. They buy the Panama Canal. They bought it from the Panamanians. They didn't go in and try and buy a port. They bought the canal, bought the government. Really sad thing. They go around bullying people and giving them lots of money, and then they put them into this thing called economic slavery, kind of what we are in, having to pay these exorbitant bills. But beyond that, they are questionable people, and they have very bad objectives. Very, very bad. I looked at them. I went, wow, that's bad objectives. Real evil-like right there. Really bad. And that's why we've got to make sure to put them in their place and make sure that they cannot do that kind of stuff to us. That would be very bad indeed. But beyond that, I would have to say that as far as my opinion goes, I think we are in a Cold War 2.0. Very cold, very icy. I've always asked him, could we turn up the temperature? I don't like it being cold. I like it being modestly adequate. Not too hot, not too cold. But sadly, they told me that it has to remain cold. They said, Mr. President, it is what it is. And I said, well, I guess we'll have to get some very thick winter coats. But honestly, I do not know why they call it cold, because I don't know what's going on with that. It's not like it's a fridge or something. Really weird. But anyways, I hope that does address that well. Thank you once again for the support. And much like Angel Art said, why in the world call it a Cold War when I could make it a cool war? It's going to be the coolest war that anyone's ever seen. We are going to be firing missiles into China like no other's ever seen. They're going to go, wow, that's a lot of missiles. The sky is going to be filled with missiles. And the Chinese are going to be so tired of it, they're going to say, please stop hitting us with missiles. And we're not going to stop hitting them with missiles because we want to keep winning. But beyond that, I thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And Kim Jong-un, his little fat ass, is also going to get the same treatment if he doesn't calm down that rhetoric. We are about to hit him real hard. We're about to hit him in that Pyong and Yang. They're going to, like the yin and yang, we're about to hit them like yang and yang. Yang and yang, people. Yang and yang, folks. It's how it works. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one, because we have many more questions, many great questions. A lot of people want to talk to me. A lot of people, trust me, a lot of people want to talk to me. You heard it here first, folks. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Jay Bagwell, who put in a $5 donation, and thank you very much, Jay, for that $5 support, and also helping to keep the channel running as well. And Jay said, you guys predicted this exact scenario with the peace talks last August, although nobody could have predicted the other drama, and well done. Honestly,
Hey.
Jay, our original prediction actually did turn out to be correct, but we kind of lost our right to take credit for it because sadly we flip-flopped kind of like the current president has done on our prediction, because things look so very confusing that I began to think that we were wrong. So it turns out we were right to begin with, and we should have just stuck with it. But, you know, hindsight is always 20/20. So it came full circle for Ukraine's sake, thankfully. But, you know, it's just on the prediction front, it's hard to predict. I'll be honest with you. But we somehow had it right the first time. But thank you very much for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I thank you so much for the support, Jay Bagwell, but I feel like we do not deserve the honor and the credit on that, just like Matthew was saying, because we became unsure of the analysis, and we started to question it and doubt it ourselves, and we actually admitted that we were wrong at one point, so we pretty much abandoned that concept. So at this point, I would have to say that while the original analysis was right, I don't think we can get credit for it, because we ditched our own analysis and didn't stick to our guns on that, in fear that we were already being proven wrong on it, and we looked wrong. But I still thank you so much for the support, Jay Bagwell, and the massive faith that you put into us. And also, it was correct. Like, that's actually crazy. But I still feel like we got to underplay that and not be like tooting our whistle like we do on everything else. Like, look at us, we were always right, because on that one, we pretty much gave up on that about 2 weeks ago and thought it was going a completely different way. But still, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Jack Ragnarsson, who puts in a 5. And thank you, Jack, as well. He said, did you know that J.D. Vance's cousin has been fighting for Ukraine since 2022? Plus, he's in the SOF, the Da Vinci Wolves, as well.
Yes, we did. We actually covered that, I think, a day or two ago at this point. And that we just found that really interesting, too. And apparently, there's been a little bit of a family squabble about that. And like it's actually turned into a bit of a family drama with them. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Darren Quinn, who puts in the 5, and thank you, Darren, as well, for that support. They said Putin has retreated to his train tunnel to all of his specialty white substances, and he's not coming out. And a place that, let's see, the Hot Dollar Man has a legit press pass. Bring up Alan Marmot.
And I gotta tell you that much like Putin, Hot Dog Man has plenty of the white stuff. They call it the Minnesota snow, but it is not the kind that comes from the sky. I can tell you that. Hot Dog Man, he's got all of the cocaine in the world, and for some reason, he's still got to stick his nose in our business instead of that giant pile. I have no idea why. Really sad man. When you look at him, you go, wow, that's a sad man. You've never seen anyone like it. He has the face of a dog, a real dog. He could go walking down the street, barking and mauling people, and people wouldn't call the cops. They would call the dog catcher because he looks like a dog. But beyond that, a real dog. I got to tell you that before we even. I got to tell you that he's a real dog. That guy. He's a real questionable guy. A real tough guy. Tough guy with the mouth only. Whenever he gets confronted by people, he shuts his mouth and he hides in the corner. Really sad. But I heard that you wanted to hear from Alan the Marmot. I don't know why you don't want to hear from me. I thought I was a great guy. Talked a lot. Talk a great deal. We can talk about anything that you want to hear about. It's a great thing, a wonderful thing. But we will make sure to get Alan the Marmot for you because everybody loves Alan the Marmot. I was actually about to type that in the search bar like we were going to find it that way, and I'm about to start doing this voice because I'm about to start laughing so hard at that. But let me go get it. And let's see here. And we have it. Hey, it's Alan the Marmot.
I'm in my UK slang phase, Gov. I'm you know what I mean? Street gang, you know, that you know, bruv, you know, well, you know what they say, you know, riding around in a Rover, you know, glocking the Rari, that whole shtick, you know, that whole thing, you know, knives, not guns. Put the knives down. Put the guns down, and you know the thing, you know, a little bit mixture of the UK slang and a little bit mixture of the whoa, Jack, but it was the fly saying down there. He's got something noble to say. Yeah.
Aw, man, when you mean noble, I'm gonna make another jab at you, then yes, the Enforcer's grift is up. It's over. Aw,
That's not noble, that's
man.
just dumb.
Aw, man. Come on, my 30 people in my little clique on my YouTube channel. Let's point and laugh.
You know, it's just you can't help some people. You can't help them. As they always say in the Palace of Buckingham, they always say you can't fix stupid. And this is something that certainly we are not equipped to fix here. I'm afraid that Bondo or a little bit of that spackling is not going to fix this problem, I'm afraid.
Aw, man, did you say spackling? Does it look white and it feels like a powdery substance?
It would probably be difficult to snort because it's a paste, but you know, you can always find a way.
Aw, man, you know I'll find a way. You know what I always say on my channel, when there's a grift, there's a way. And oh, buddy, there's a way.
Oh dear, Hot Dog Man was so confused when he ended up at the halfway house. He thought he was halfway to the drug dealer, but it turned out that he was not. He was halfway to recovery, but didn't quite make it.
Hot Dog Man's the kind of fella to knock on the door of the halfway house and then go, excuse me, do you know the way to the trap house?
Sorry, sir. We are not trapping. We are not doing that here. We're not trappers. This is a friendly place.
I'm not talking about that trap. I'm talking about that real kind of trap. You know, that kind of powder. I really need it. I need it. And I needed to be here for me.
For me? But good Lord. How can we be there for me when you're not even there for yourself?
Man, honestly, though, all jokes aside, man, I really do miss the hit videos. You know, like, I got so used to the hit pieces coming out every 2 weeks that it's really kind of a shame that one hasn't come out in a couple of months now. I actually felt like we had a little bit of notoriety when the hit pieces were coming out. You know, it's like we were big enough to have a scandal. Now, nothing. He only runs his mouth on Twitter, which isn't really as fulfilling.
You know, I'm not trying to be petty here because I'm not trying to get into pissing contests. But, you know, last night we had not a power outage. We had a Wi-Fi outage and we had to restart the stream to get the rest of our super chats. So the second stream lasted, I think, about 20 minutes or so.
30.
And our 30 minutes. And our second stream got 25,000 views in total. Just for context, by the way, because Hot Dog Man wants to pretend like our channel's dying and wants to try to say that the quote-unquote grifting is coming to an end, even though nobody's grifting anything except for reporting the news. He's over there, and you know, for example, the Wi-Fi outage stream last night, the second one, the small stream that was just a makeup stream, got 25,000 views. Like I said, that is about, I think, 5 or 6 times larger than Hot Dog Man's normal mainstream live stream. which is crazy because that was not even our actual live stream. That was at midnight, folks. At midnight, in the middle of the night, we got 5 or 6 times the viewers that Hot Dog Man gets. That shows you the difference in the two channels right there.
It really does. It's so sad when you think about it, man. Like, it really is such a shame. But it's such a shame that he hasn't just quit yet. Like, he ought to just quit while he's behind. But anyways, with that, hopefully a new hit piece will be made on this. I really do miss them. And it is time for us to move on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Dubstep Kid 801, who put in a $2 donation, and thank you very much, Dubstep Kid, for that support, and we appreciate that very much. And 2 Bobcats, by the way, 2 Bobcats. But also, we had a 2 from Jack Ray. Also, Jack Ray just put in the live chat too. He said, if the grifting is coming to an end, does that mean that the Hot Dog Man is closing his channel? It should. Like, honestly, like, he should make a commitment since he's so anti-grifter. He's what you call an anti-grifter warrior, and he wants to call everybody a grifter except himself, who begs for a desk and chair and a trip to DC, which has nothing to do with running his channel, but he wants to pester the viewers for the money. He said, give me the money, you owe it to me, damn it. It's like, would the Hot Dog Man be willing to take on this bet? If he stops grifting and the grifting is coming to an end, then is he going to commit to close his channel? I mean, because I think that'd be a fair thing to do. He should probably commit to close his channel because the grift, it's just too much. He can't keep grifting like this.
Aw, man, but I need my desk and a chair and a trip to DC, and how I always set up my fundraisers is that I'll make them thousands of dollars, which is a really high goal considering I only have 30 people watching. Those 30 people might give me a couple of $100, and then I don't reach the goal, and I stop the fundraiser, but I never give anyone back their money. It's like, man, it's like, that's not really that great looking, not that great looking. Like, kind of questionable.
You know what's crazy? What's crazy is the CNN and Fox and them has been grifting for ages. They've been reporting the news for a long time. Or at least giving their opinion these days or something like that. But how come Hot Dog Man's not calling them out? They're reporting news too and making money from it by running commercials. How come they're not grifting?
Yeah, literally, according to him, everyone's grifting, man. Like because if you do an actual job and you're good at your job, because I feel like we're pretty okay at our job. We're not the best at it, but we do pretty good with making sure that there's some humor and analysis and news. So, and also on top of that, our numbers speak for themselves. I mean, we have like 9.7 thousand people here at the peak every night in live stream viewership. We have to be doing something good. It's like, if you do good and then people enjoy the channel and support it, it's like, that's just your job. It's like, I think the thing with him, man, is that he doesn't like when people do better than him. And also he acts like you have to be an activist to cover news, which isn't the case. Because I don't even know. Honestly, man, I don't even think that's it, man. I honestly just think that it's that he doesn't like us, so he just says stupid stuff. But honestly, he sounds like a crack addict, like when he says it. Like, he doesn't even make any sense with it.
I think I know what it is. I have a feeling that I know exactly what it is. It's funny, when he was literally begging on Discord about 2 years ago, when we had that live stream where we were on camera for the first time. He was begging in the DMs to Andrew to come on this stream. And he was like, at that point, he knew about our channel. Like, he knew everything about it. We weren't grifters when he wanted to come on our show. At that point, we were legitimate, solid businessmen that were running a news channel. And he wanted to come on here because he felt that the channel was so good that he had to be a part of it. And long story short, he acted a fool and got very rude. And we told him, you're not coming on. You can't come on acting rude. So we told him we're going to pass. And then from that point forward, we became grifters. We became people that were worthy of being doxxed and harassed on a daily basis. And that's how the Hot Dog Man turned into the grifter shtick, was because he got turned down. And, honestly, like, he turned down a big opportunity because we actually basically made another channel that we won't name, but it happens to start with U and M. Made that channel basically into what it is today. And Hot Dog Man wanted the same thing for himself by coming on our show. So he didn't quite make it. He didn't make the cut. And he sort of just stayed in oblivion from that point forward.
Man, it was such a shame, such a shame. He had nothing but nice things to say about us before that, and then he just started hating us afterwards. He hates us because he ain't us. That's simply how it works. And oh man, it's always funny to think about that. But one thing that I always feel happy in these days is that he is doing very badly, and most likely is not able to financially support himself doing it anymore, really, with the whole harassing side of things. Probably why he doesn't have enough free time to spare to make a hit piece on us again. But I hope that he does, because me personally, like, now that he's pretty much like we are such a large channel and he's such a small one that he's practically insignificant at this point. Honestly, it's funny. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, and we have to get on into the rest of the questions. So, Matthew, what do we got?
And this one goes to Arvia Carson, who puts in a 2. And thank you very much, by the way, for that first ever super chat on the channel. And we appreciate it very much because that's the support that helps keep us running. And thank you very much, Carson, for that support. We also had a 2 from Jack Ray, who said, whatever happened to Sylvia the Sockeye Salmon?
I don't really know. Sylvia the Sockeye Salmon just stopped coming on to the live chat one day, and that was it. Sadly, we don't really know what happens to viewers like that who just like disappear. Hopefully they're all right. But
they were here the other night. They just don't do that shtick anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were here like I think a week ago.
Oh, dang. I didn't even know. That's actually pretty cool. So they're still around. It's just they don't do the Sylvia the Sockeye Salmon thing, which is a little unfortunate because I remember that used to be a big thing back in the day. But still, thank you once again for support. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. So with that, folks, we are now moving on to our live chat questions, and we have some time tonight to grab a few of them, actually. So jumping into our Morse code decoders of the stream, we had Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Burnett, Kevin J, Paul Schultz, Dave Millsap, Roy Fluffiness, Arabelle Garbo, Joni Dog, and Norm Pritchett. They said the Morse for tonight says, right now it's up to the Russians on what's going to go down. It'll be nasty. LLT, LSA.
And that's the sound of money. Y'all hit that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. I got to congratulate y'all greatly for getting that correct on the 1113th day of the war, because you'll continue to get that right time and time again. And so with that, a massive shout out to you greatly, once again, to all of you. And with that, it's time for us to get on into some live chat questions. And we actually are not overtime yet. We have 8 minutes until we reach time. And so we will be answering as many live chats as we can before we hit time. So Matthew, what do we got?
So this one goes to Philip V. LSA, who says, could the Putin that we see in the video in Kursk be one of the body doubles instead of the real deal?
It's possible, but I think it's a little bit unlikely because it seemed like that might have been a genuine Putin. And also the fact that he was talking at all and that, you know, Putin has a pretty recognizable voice, that would lead me to believe that it couldn't have been a body double. And so with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, in my opinion. And also, we have one more super chat.
Yes, we do. And this one goes to Andrew Honeycutt, who puts in the 5. And thank you, Andrew, as well, for supporting the channel. And he said just a few bucks to acknowledge your pragmatic and rational views. Also, I really appreciate the history stuff because I'm a history nerd myself.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, Andrew Honeycutt. And thank you so much for enjoying the pragmatic and rational views. Well, some people don't, but I'm glad to know the LSA really does. And also, thank you so much for enjoying the history stuff because I'm a bit of a history nerd myself. I majored in it and got a bachelor's in it in college. So I know a good deal about it. I knew a good deal about it before I went to college, but college made it official. And so with that, thank you so much once again. Hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next live chat question.
And this one goes to Baby Amy, who says, I heard that Zelenskyy told them to pull out of Kursk.
The way you phrased that, it sounded wrong.
It was cut off. It was cut off at the very end. I had to double click the box to see it. That was not like intentional, by the way.
Well, Zelenskyy did tell him to pull out, actually, I'm just kidding. I didn't hear that myself. It seems as though Siversk is staying. They're going to be staying there for as long as they can, meaning they're in the process of retreating right now. So I don't know how much longer the Kursk salient will hold. So with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Whackbird, who says, what if a NATO member gets tired of Russia's crap and just attacks?
Well, they'd be on their own, because NATO is a defensive pact. If they begin an aggressive war against the Russian Federation, they're largely on their own, because NATO doesn't provide an offensive alliance. It only provides defense against an attack, meaning that Russia would have to be the aggressor party for that country to ever get helped out by the whole of NATO. So with that, I hope that addresses that well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Just Sackett, who says, do you think that the Ukrainians should resort to establishing their version of the Red Ball Express used by the U.S. during World War II?
It would be nice for them to do that, but really the big problem is even if they did that, it's more so the drones are causing major issues with the Red Ball Express, and so they'd have to deal with a drone issue somehow before they could really get into delivering supplies in those kinds of instances. So with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least from what we are understanding right now with the situation in Kursk. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Canada is Sovereign, who says, we had high expectations the F-16 would be a game changer, but yet we hear nothing about their use. And why is that? And what's the missing piece?
They're used in a very limited air defense role for the large part. They have been used in air-to-ground operations, but once again, in a very limited aspect. And that's why they haven't really been a game changer, is because there's not enough of them and there's not enough armament for them to actually be used to a really high capability or efficiency for the large part. So I hope that answers that well. Very good question, by the way. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Eric Horner, LSA, and he has a very good question, by the way. I was about to read off support, but it's a live chat question. But Eric Horner said, do you think that at the period in time, it was a good idea for the nukes to be taken from Ukraine? And was the government stable at the moment?
In that period of time, it was a good idea. A lot of people like to diss on it nowadays, but they are completely forgetting the situation that existed in 1994 when we took the nukes from Ukraine. Ukraine was a brand new country. They were broke, like quite truly broke. The economy was non-existent. Crime was rampant. Corruption was the only way to get ahead. And these nuclear weapons existed in a country that couldn't afford to maintain them, and the corruption and the crime was ripe enough that these nuclear weapons could end up disappearing into the larger world due to that corruption and also the crime. So with that in mind, it was a very good decision at the time to denuclearize Ukraine and stop them from having the third largest nuclear arsenal on the planet, because there wouldn't have really been anything good to come out of that. Yes, the Ukrainian governmental stability of today exists to some degree, but it hasn't really existed through most of Ukraine's history since 1991. So I would say that looking at it at the time, it was a very great decision. And I honestly still think it was a great decision to this day. Like, yes, it didn't help Ukraine out in defending themselves, but as far as what would have actually happened, what would have inevitably happened with loose nukes floating around the world from Ukraine because of the state that it was in during that time, it would have always happened under any scenario. And so it was a lot better to denuclearize them than possibly have a group like Al-Qaeda that has an intercontinental ballistic missile and can directly fire it at the United States at any given moment to further a terrorist attack or anything along those lines. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Don's Analysis, who says, what happens if Russia comes out and just flat says, we'll take all of Ukraine? Also, what kind of advantage does an army have that's been forced to use donkeys to have the upper hand?
Well, they don't really have a lot of upper hand, like, to be entirely honest. The Russians...
You have no hand. You don't have the cards.
You don't have the cards. I'm not here to play cards. Yes, you are. You are sitting at my table. You have a poker card in your hand. That's actually just a normal card. Deck of cards. Regal Paper Company. Great company. I buy all my cards from them. Really nice. I used to buy my dice from them that I used to play Dungeons and Dragons, or as I like to call it, Donald and Dill, or whatever. I don't know. I'm trying to make that work. But beyond that, I have to say that in my opinion, they have no cards and they have no hand and they largely suck. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And we are on to the third to last question of the night.
This one goes to Jenkins USA, who says, why was the Budapest Memorandum abandoned?
The Budapest Memorandum wasn't necessarily the Budapest, but the Budapest Memorandum wasn't really abandoned per se. The Budapest Memorandum wasn't even really binding to begin with. That's kind of the issue with having a memorandum versus a treaty. A treaty is an actual binding agreement between two national entities. A memorandum is more so like, you got my word, and words can easily be broken. And so it technically wasn't really broken because memorandums can be, just not followed really easily. But that would be the best thing I could give as an answer. And also the situation would make it to where if the United States and Britain did try and follow through with the Budapest Memorandum, then we have Britain and the United States, which are two nuclear-armed powers, fighting the Russian Federation, which is a nuclear-armed power, inside of Ukraine, which is a non-nuclear power. And then we could see that that could easily devolve into a nuclear conflict. So that was also another limiting reason as well as to why people didn't want to honor the Budapest Memorandum, because the consequences could be dire for many. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. We are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this, excuse me, this one goes to K-Man, who says, do you think Russia will try and take the Suwalki Gap?
If they ever started a war with NATO, that is certainly the weakest link. So yes, and I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who's the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And this one goes to Mark M., who says, would it be possible to go back to the Treaty of Paris in 1856 that ended the Crimean War?
No, that's a treaty to end an entirely different conflict that had nothing to do with the modern state of Ukraine. So there's not really a way. There's not really a way. If it was a war involving the Ottoman Empire, France, and the United Kingdom, and the Russian Empire, then yes. But this conflict involves the state of Ukraine and the Russian Federation, which were neither signing parties of the Treaty of Paris of 1856. So with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. And with that, we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank you all so much once again for watching. There's been 60,000 people here over the length of the stream. And not only that, a whopping 9.6 thousand people were here at the peak. I've got to thank you all so much for watching, and I got to thank you all for joining us today here on this channel. We have reached 338,131 subscribers. Again. Crazy, right? Crazy. Looks like the channel is not over. It looks like the grift isn't over here. But beyond that, I thank you all so much once again for watching, and we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of news from around the world. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, thank you all for another fantastic stream once again tonight. And we will be seeing you all tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern for another night of War News streams. And once again, probably big news happening tomorrow as well. So if there is, you'll be hearing from the Enforcer midday on the Short War video. And you'll be hearing from both of us tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern. So be sure to join us for that. And also, remember, folks, of course, Slava Ukraine, Hero Slava, get some rest, and good night.